March 12th. We are calling the meeting to order at, that clock's wrong,
7:06.
7:06 p.m. Could the secretary call the roll?
Sure. Chris, Roger,
Here.
Claire, Tom. Claire, are you on with us?
Wait, I'm attending remotely under the provisions of the Contagious Illness Act or whatever it is.
AB 2449.
Okay,
Kimberly,
Here.
Scott,
Here. I'm also attending remotely.
Scott's. Gus,
Here.
Connie here, and Kevin is, I think, not attending tonight. He's absent, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I don't see him.
yeah, I think he said he couldn't.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, great. The next item on the agenda is the Board of Supervisors report and reports from other government officials. I see Marisol. Would you like to start?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Kimberly. Well, first, I just want to say, Kimberly, we missed you at the meet and greet. It was a very nice time. But I understand that, things come up. So I just wanted to thank the rest of the council for being able to attend, and, just spending some time here at the facility in Redwood City. Now moving to my announcements. I wanted to mention to you all, there was a Tuesday meeting. Obviously, this Tuesday I wasn't able to be there. I was out sick, but having to catch up on that. But other than that, what did happen was that Measure A passed with about 84% of the vote. If you want more information about it, please feel free to go to the county executive's office press or news section. There is a press release about that. Also, the county engaged in preparing the budget and Measure K review, and the county executive's office reported that 33% of all discretionary Measure K was spent on the coast side. So that is just one update on how the budget was spent on the discretionary Measure K funds. So I hope that's a positive note for you all. And I hope that tonight the rest of this week is good in spite of the weather reports.
Thank you. Are there questions for Marisol? Gus?
Hey, Marisol. First, thanks for inviting us to that event. It was really great to get to meet all the department heads. There's going to be a LAFCO meeting here on the coast side next week at
Yes.
Ray's office, and I was
Sorry,
just,
yes, that was my.
Okay,
Thanks,
sorry.
Gus.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Okay, yes. The very last point was that the next LAFCO meeting is going to be held on the coast. It'll be held March 19 at 2 p.m. So just know that the next LAFCO meeting, March 19 at 2 p.m., will be held on the coast at our office at Capistrano Way.
And it looks like Harbor District and Coastside Fire are on the agenda for that. So I would just put it out there for folks who are interested in either of those agencies. This meeting is perhaps worth checking in on.
Thanks, Gus. And it looks like I have one more announcement that I'm just remembering that I didn't write down. The other very short announcement is that I did provide Claire with a copy of the letter that we sent to Samtrans, and I specifically sealed it with the prayer. So that letter went out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Chris?
On Measure A, Marisol, did they have a read on what voter turnout percentage was?
It should be on, I would say if it's not on the COE's website, you can go to the assessor's website and check it out there.
I think it was 21.
21%.
Yeah.
wow.
That's
Disappointing.
you didn't think it was going to pass.
Measure A did pass with about 84%. But in terms of other breakdowns, if you want to look at it, I think if it's not on the COE website with respect to the percentages, you could check it out on the county assessor's office, I believe.
Okay, thank you. I see Greg Dieguez has his hand raised.
Hi, Marisol, two things. Can we find out what that election cost? I don't expect you to have the answer at your fingertips, but let me know or let us know where we can see that information. Secondly, as far as the Measure K stuff, I looked at the spreadsheet last week. I couldn't attend that out of site retreat. And it had 62 point something million out of 122 million for homelessness and another 30 or 40 million for social services. But I didn't see a breakdown that said it went to the coast side. And the same thing happened last year. Ray made a comment that we got so much money, but I didn't see how that was identified. So I'm asking if we can get a breakdown or somebody can put it in a spreadsheet so we can sort it, so we can see what amounts of money actually went to the coast side. Because in previous years, a lot of the stuff we asked for funding for, like the CARES program, was never funded. Yet we were told they spent the money on the coast side. So I don't know where it went. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I
Jill,
noted that. Thank you.
Jill Grant.
Thank you. Thanks for your report. On the Measure A, I know there's a website, but it would be really great just to hear a quick little summary of the next steps to remove the sheriff. It could be just like 2 or 3 sentences.
Jill, on the county executive's office website that I announced as well, you should be able to find that information on there. So if you go to the county executive's office, press releases, you'll find Measure A, and you can click there, and you should find the next steps, what they mentioned.
Are you saying you don't know, or you just aren't allowed to tell us, or what?
I'm gonna refrain from being detailed in that process, just because I don't want to make any mistake, even though the measure has passed. But I would like to suggest that you visit the website for that information specifically.
Okay, and then I think I heard that it passed, it was approved by 87% and 21% of the county voted. So it was approved by what, 16%? Does that sound about right?
Right now, I only have the figure of it passing by about 84%. Maybe it was the day that I looked at it. I'm not sure where you're getting the statistic from.
I just listened to Gus. Gus
Oh.
said it was 21% of the voters actually turned out. And it was
Okay.
approved by, I think you said 84%. That's where I got the numbers.
Okay. Well, I
So
mean, I'll
84
have to look. Go ahead.
84% of the 21% that voted.
Okay.
No, she's not saying that 20, that's Gus saying that. So I think unless,
That's what I saw.
What you're saying is
So,
16% of the eligible voters made the decision.
yeah,
Correct.
the county assessor's office says they processed 108,000 ballots. There are over 400,000 registered voters in San Mateo County, so it's definitely less than 25%.
Okay.
Okay, Jill, did you have another question?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, Sid, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question for Marisol?
Hi, Sid.
Hello. No, not really. I just wanted to tell people that you can just go on the county elections website to get all that information. Maybe not about the next steps, but they still haven't verified all the votes. It says on here under election results for the March 4th special election that the next update will be tomorrow. So they're still counting absentee ballots, and what they do is they go through a process of checking signatures and making sure all the ballots that they received are legit. You know, either the true voter or the right
Yeah.
signature, that sort of thing. So they haven't even finalized the whole election yet. But there is a really terrible turnout ratio for our district. Even with the most recent November election, our county, the voter percentage, I think, was only 33%. So, and this was just one issue ballot. So people don't always do what they should and take their citizens' rights and duties, seriously. But
Okay,
anybody
Sid,
look up
can I move on to other questions before we?
smcacre.gov if anybody wants it.
Thanks for clarifying that, Sid.
You're welcome.
But again,
you.
the other website is the county executive's office, just so you don't confuse both.
Yeah, and they did put out a thing about what their next steps are on the. I think Michelle Durand is the person that put that out of what they have to wait for the election to be finalized first.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Are there any other questions for Marisol? Anyone in the room? Okay. Are there any other government officials who would like to make an announcement?
I have a brief, an informational item from the Resource Conservation District. This is
Sure.
Timothy.
Sure, Timothy, please go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you all. If we haven't met, my name is Timothy Federal. I manage the Forest Health and Fire Program at the Resource Conservation District. And I just want to give an update on two brief items. It looks like in my emails with Claire that I'm actually going to be able to be on the agenda for April 9th, perhaps, to give a more detailed, comprehensive update on what we've been up to lately. But recently we just got the funding agreement signed. We did get two grants. One of them is for the implementation of a fuel break along Highway 92, beginning at Skyline Boulevard and going down the east side of the ridge to Interstate 280 on San Francisco Public Utilities land there, or SF Water land. And then we also got a grant. These are both from the Coastal Conservancy to permit and do a shaded fuel, or not a shaded fuel break, do a fuel break on Highway 1 north of the Tom Lantos tunnels, just between the Lantos tunnels and the city limits of Pacifica there. That grant will also include additional work on the Pedro Point Headlands property and City of Pacifica properties in that wildland urban interface there around Pedro Point. So we're really excited about both of those projects. The Highway 92 project will potentially begin implementation this year. The Highway 1 project would not begin until next year at the earliest. That is a little bit more. We've already, the permitting is already complete for Highway 92. Highway 1 is going to require a little bit more work to get it shovel ready. But we're working on it. So we'll keep you guys updated and in the loop as progress is made on both those projects. And look forward to giving a more comprehensive update on those projects, as well as the other projects we're working on the Midcoast and beyond next month.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Timothy? I don't see any. I have one. Are all of those projects funded by the Coastal Conservancy?
The two that I just spoke of are funded by the Coastal Conservancy. Yes. We have other projects. Well, and I should say that some of the work to get the Highway 92 project ready has been funded by San Mateo County through Measure K funds. So, but the implementation will be funded by the Coastal Conservancy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other government officials who would like to make an announcement or an update? I see none. So we'll then move on to public comments and announcements. Are there members of the public who would like to give a public comment? Please raise your hands. I see Greg Dieguez.
Hi, the MCC knows this, but I wanted to announce to the public that I've turned over to the MCC what I'm calling the third edition of the Stormwater Report. And I'm hoping that you will agendize it and do what you will going forward. Specifically, I'm hoping the MCC will help the residents who have expressed fear for their lives in their homes, like the woman last year who came from El Granada that said she couldn't sleep because she was afraid of trees in the median falling on her. And there was the woman last week, Karen Wilson, who's being flooded out. The county is asking her to build the stormwater controls, and she says it's not her water. And then we have, of course, Burnett Silveria, who's been sandbagging his home in El Granada for years, along with other residents. And I hope the MCC will take those issues under their wing and try and influence the county for action. Finally, I'm on the steering committee of Red Alert Montara Moss Beach. We have reached out to Becker, Berman, as well as Supervisor Mueller, and they're going to plan with the eye of getting Caltrans to do something about the fire hazard there. I don't have a date yet. Looks like it's going to be in April, but I want community members to know that we are trying to get Caltrans to mitigate the fire risk in that eucalyptus forest. Thanks.
Thank you. Catherine? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
My dog was barking. I didn't want to give you the full sound effects here. I wanted to note that I have lived since 1985 in an area with a lot of eucalyptus trees that, if there were a fire, would block our only ingress and egress on the little street we live on. I have been concerned about this Caltrans right-of-way, and MWSD has been working to get local control of it since I got on the board in about 1996. And we have been working with Caltrans. We have been working with the county. We got a resolution from the county some years ago telling Caltrans to give it to us. It was unanimous vote by the County Board of Supervisors saying that it should be given to us. And what's happened in the meantime, we've stayed in touch. We've had very little communication from them. But in the time that Caltrans has owned that, all that's happened to it, except for 1/4 of a block that got clear cut, the county and the state Caltrans have been allowing the trees and bushes to grow and become an ever greater fire hazard. It's not only a fire hazard in terms of just burning and what it does to the community. From the research I have done talking to water districts like Paradise and Santa Cruz and so on, it will take out the water system. It will melt the pipes and put contaminants into our drinking water pipe system. It can also put contaminants and do damage to our sewer system. And we have the information on it. And so I would encourage not only the RMB, I'm sorry, I'm not good at acronyms, Greg, to work to get this under community control. Because otherwise, Caltrans is going to come in, clear it off, and the root span on a eucalyptus is about the same as its foliage span. And when the trunk is cut off, you get all kinds of little trees growing up from the extended root system. So it can actually make it even a bigger problem. So I'm asking all of the community from Half Moon Bay up into Pacifica, because we're all affected by this, to help MWSD take control of this and clean this part up, and we can work with the other GGNRA and the other agencies as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any other public comments? Are there any in the room? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. I'm closing public comment. The consent agenda is approve the minutes of the February 26, 2025 meeting. I want to point out that the revised minutes were posted yesterday. So if you read the first version, the second version has some corrections to spelling and other things like that. Do we want to vote to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Could you call the roll,
Sure.
Connie?
Sure. Claire,
Yes,
Kimberly,
Yes?
Scott? Scott,
Yes.
Q?
Can you hear me?
Gus? Yeah, we heard you. Gus?
Yes.
Okay.
Chris?
Yes.
Connie, yes.
Great. And now we'll move on to the regular agenda. I see that Jim Pruitt is in the room, and we welcome Jim to give us an update on the Harbor District.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to give you an update on the Harbor District, what we've accomplished recently, and what our future looks like, which it looks very bright. I'm going to try to share my screen because I do have just an outline of what I'll be talking about. Well, it says my share screen is not on, so I'll send a request to somebody.
Just a moment. Got that, Jim?
Yeah, is my screen sharing now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I will try it. Oh, I'll try it again. Oh, here we go. There we go. How's that?
Yep.
Fantastic. So this is an update from the San Mateo County Harbor District at a request from the MCC, and we're happy to do it. See if we can get it to move. Of course, I'm the general manager, Jim Pruitt. I've been here since December of 2019. And then the slate of board members are in front of you. And President Catherine Slater Carter is present online with us tonight. What I'm going to be discussing tonight is just a brief review of our budget, finances, and transparency, recent projects, Johnson Pier electrical upgrades, the Pillar Point Harbor Launch Ramp Rehabilitation Project, the Surfers Beach Replenishment Project and Harbor Dredge, Pillar Point Harbor Expansion, Princeton Shoreline Project, WRDA 2024, and the Pillar Point Harbor Sea Level Rise Study, additional parking for Pillar Point Harbor, and then public outreach. With respect to budget and finance and transparency,
Good yawn.
we okay?
One mute their microphones, please.
Did you see who it was?
No.
I think it
I'll
might be.
proceed.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Deborah
With the
Lowry's-
budget, the district has been working real hard over the past several years to provide a transparent budget that explains clearly to what the district is doing and how we're spending our money, both tax dollars and our revenue dollars. And that budget has earned a national award for 5 years in a row now from the Government Finance Officers Association for a distinguished budget. And we're very proud of that, and we hope to again earn it this year. Our finances over 6 years now, we've had a clean third-party audit of our finances with no recommendations, and so we're doing very well there. And our transparency, the Special District Leadership Foundation District Transparency Certificate of Excellence. We've had that now for going on 5 years. And we were just recertified in 2024. So we're doing great with that. Recent completed projects over the last couple of years, we completed the public fishing pier, the West Trail Living Shoreline, the Surfers Beach Restroom and Green Space Project, which has been extremely well received and used. The Coastal Trail Extension at Perch Beach, again, another greatly appreciated project that allows people of all abilities to be able to transit on the coastal trail all the way through the harbor. The commercial building ADA restroom upgrade for the restaurants and the stores. And then the Harbor Master's upgrade, which included ADA access to the Harbor Master's office. Projects that we're working on are planned to finish in the near future. The Bear Terminus, where the fish buyers offload all the squid, salmon, and crab, lacks sufficient power to operate the new modern equipment. So they've had to bring in large diesel generators that spew exhaust and take up valuable space on the end of the pier. The district has undertaken a project and is in the middle of that project right now to upgrade the electrical supply for the pier terminus that will eliminate the requirement or need for those portable generators, stopping the exhaust and also freeing up valuable space. So that's a great project we're again very proud of. This project, the Pillar Point Harbor Launch Rehab Project, it's a fairly significant project for us in the harbor that will have significant impact. It'll include new floating docks, new boat wash stations, new launch ramp, new turnaround apron, new restroom complex. Our intent is to have something very similar to that at the West Trail. So unisex bathroom stalls, a dressing room, outdoor showers, hand washing, fish washing, bike locks, and then an improved coastal trail through that area. And the other great news about this project is that it is funded right now through a $400,000 grant for design, engineering, and permitting. And we're very optimistic that we'll get also grant funding to actually do the construction. So no local dollars will be spent on this project for the harbor, which is great. On a sidebar, the black circle on your screen shows the outlet pipe for the Deer Creek outfall. Thousands of cubic yards of sand each year come out of that outfall and come into the harbor and gets trapped. After every storm, we have to come in and knock down the high spots underneath our floating docks because our floating docks get height centered on the sand that comes into the harbor. There has been some discussion about how to solve this problem, and it's a long-term solution is to possibly reroute the outfall for Deer Creek over to Surfers Beach. So Surfers Beach would have a continuous source of sand to keep it supplied with sand and provide protection for the coast side. But again, that project hasn't been brought, it's not formal yet. It's just been discussed in the past and currently being considered by staff. This is a huge project that's been decades in coming. The Surfers Beach Replenishment Pilot Project and Harbor Dredge. The picture on top is currently Surfers Beach as you see it. The same thing with the picture down in the left-hand corner. Surfers Beach disappeared. All the sand was stripped off the beach by the currents and wave patterns that were changed when the Pillar Point Harbor breakwater was built. Because of the change in currents and wave action, all the sand was removed and wasn't replenished like it normally would be, causing accelerated coastal erosion from Pillar Point Harbor down to Pilarcitos Creek. When the breakwater was originally built, the Army Corps acknowledged the fact that this damage would occur, but also stated that they wouldn't address it at that time, and that was back in the 50s. I'll discuss that a little later in the presentation with another project. The project on the picture on the lower right, again, is after a storm and all the sand that washed in from Deer Creek. You can see now there's sand islands, and then over on the far right of that photo, the launch ramp is actually in the air. And a little hard to dock your boat when your launch ramp is in the air on top of soil. So working to solve that project, but that over in the southeast portion of the harbor will all be dredged as part of this project, and 100 cubic yards from inside the harbor will be transported and put onto Surfers Beach. And then Surfers Beach, the next slide kind of shows you where the area of the dredge, you see those black lined areas over on the left is where we'll be dredging. The highlighted green areas were seagrass many couple of years ago, but most of those seagrass beds have been destroyed by coastal storms and clam digging. So they're a lot smaller now. But we're still going to be dredging the harbor and then putting it over onto Surfers Beach. And this drawing shows you approximate location of the new sand deposits. It will be from the breakwater corner there at the restroom complex all the way down to basically Coronado Street. The beach will be reestablished. And the surf will be breaking on the beach and not on Highway 1 as it was today. So that's a great event. And again, it's a pilot project to study it. And the information we gain from this will be used in the future. There it goes. Having computer problems tonight. I apologize. The district is looking to better serve the public and meet the demands of the tenants and users of Pillar Point Harbor. There's been a lot of requests for storage for boats, for crab pots and fishing equipment. So the district is providing that space through the acquisition of some properties. Recently, as recent as this month, the district purchased 6 lots over in Princeton on the corner of Princeton Avenue and Vassar Street. It's currently being used as a boat storage yard. The district's not changing the aspect of that right now. It may change based on the strategic plan on what we use that property for, but currently it'll just continue as is until the district has fully evaluated that. In January 2024, the owners of properties right above the launch ramp next door to Sam's and RC3 parking lot called the district, and they were very interested in working with the district, so the district as a public agency would be able to purchase that land and we were able to work a deal with the owners to sell that property to the district. And in January 2024, the district purchased that product or those pieces of property. There is 5 pieces of property between Sam's Restaurant and the little greenhouse, which is next to our parking lot, upper parking lot. And then across Highway 1, there's 2 lots that came with the purchase that the district also owns on the Burnham Strip. Exact use of these properties will be determined by the Harbor Board and public input as we complete and work through our final stages of the strategic plan, which is we're working on now. This is a remarkable project that it could cost up to $15 million, but again, no local, or there'll be very minimal local dollars supporting this project. It'll all be, a majority of it, except for 4.8% of it, will be federally funded. And it's going to reestablish the coast side or the coastline at Princeton by the Sea, and also stop or mitigate the current that has stripped that beach and West Trail as a result of the construction of the breakwater. So under the Section 111 of the Army Corps' Continuing Authorities Program, the Harbor District asked them to address and mitigate and prevent damage caused by the breakwater. They conducted an initial study and it came out positive for cost-benefit analysis. And now the district, Harbor District, a few weeks ago signed all the agreements necessary for the Army Corps to enter the feasibility stage. And the district is now responsible for 4.8% of the cost that will reestablish that beach and put in the independent breakwater or reef inside the harbor. And that inside the harbor reef will be made of concrete structures or others that are porous and have holes in them. So it'll also serve as a fish habitat or a marine habitat. It is an Army Corps project. In the feasibility stage, which we're entering right now, the Army Corps will come up with multiple different ideas and solutions to the issue to mitigate and prevent damage. And those will be presented for public input on the best project to move forward on. The non-federal sponsor for this project is the Harbor District. We're very excited about this and it's moving forward. And within 5 years, I think we'll see a brand new shoreline on Princeton by the Sea, from Barbara's Fish Trap all the way over to the marsh. And again, the federal government will be paying a majority of those funds. This is a remarkable accomplishment for the coast side. Working with Anna Eshu's office, we were able to get Pillar Point Harbor Sea Level Rise Study into WRDA 2024, the Water Resources Development Act. What that did was provided the authority for the Army Corps to conduct a study, and they can't do anything without doing the initial study for a project that will address and mitigate and prevent the excessive coastal erosion from Pillar Point to Pilarcitos Creek that was caused by the installation of the breakwater back in 1960. It could include enhancing the existing reef offshore so that the waves will break on the reef and not on the beach. It will address and protect the coastal bluffs, Surfers Beach, Murata Beach, Murata Park, Miramar, the condos, Highway 1, Coastal Trail, and improve navigational safety into the mouth of the harbor. If we do get to the feasibility stage, which I believe we will, is again an Army Corps project. Right now, the non-federal sponsor is going to be the Harbor District. And unlike the authorities under the Continuing Authorities Program, there is no cap on this project. So there's no funding cap. It could go well beyond the $15 million. And probably 4 times that much once the project gets designed and engineered and permitted. And then once complete, we'll have a much stronger, much more resilient coastline. And the county and the state and the Harbor District will not have to go in and continually repair the coastline due to coastal storms. Right now, we're just in the authorization stage for the study, and we're working with Sam Licardo's office in identifying the funding for that study in the Army Corps. Another issue that the Harbor District has faced over the years is not having enough sufficient parking to meet the public demand for access to the waterfront. Our parking lots are used for boaters, hikers, kayakers, paddleboarders, and people who use the coastal trail. It's one of the few places where there's free parking and complete, smooth, and ADA accessible access to the coastal trail. And is also completely full on occasions where it's a busy day with a fish opening, or when the bluefin's running, or when the harbor's having an event such as the Lighted Boat Festival. People are forced to find parking outside the Harbor District in the neighborhoods. The boats and trailers have been parked up and down Highway 1. I'm sure all of us have seen that. Parking on Highway 1 is not only dangerous, it's illegal to park on the shoulder of Highway 1 or any state highway unless it's an emergency. So the Harbor District is looking for some additional areas where we can provide another parking area. Looking at the properties that the district owned, the board and the staff came up with an idea of putting parking on the north end of the Murata Strip, or Burnham Strip, down towards Capistrano Boulevard. Properties both owned by the district, the private persons, the county, and there's a very wide Caltrans right-of-way that's also going to be involved in any project. This is as far as the project has been designed, is those blocks you've seen on the screen. Beyond that, what it looks like, how it's built, what it's built of, what the vegetation will be, none of that has been decided. Definitely public input will be required. The parcels on the Granada or Burnham Strip are labeled EG, which is a district to provide low intensity development at the Burnham Strip that preserves the greatest degree possible the visual and open space characteristics of this property. The Gateway District, the EG again, allows for lineal parks and trails, outdoor athletic facilities, outdoor recreational areas. vegetative stormwater treatment systems, underground storage facilities, public parking for Surfers Beach access, and public restrooms and showers. And this would be in support of the recreational activities, outdoor activities at the harbor and on the coastal trail and on the beaches. What the district is, just from a quick staff level brainstorming, looking at the considerations that we'd want a contractor to look at in designing this for us. The view corridor must be maintained. A feeling of open space must be maintained. There must be public access. A permeable surface. We're not looking for an asphalt parking lot. It's patrolled day and night by the Harbor Patrol. It'll be maintained and cleaned by the Harbor Patrol. Trash will be picked up multiple times a day. It will have native landscaping. It will comply with dark skies. It will comply with stormwater requirements. There will be no overnight parking, no IV parking, and no large commercial vehicles. And because RVs and commercial vehicles would interrupt with the view shed. And plus, we don't want to use it as that. It's an overflow parking lot for vehicles during the day when the harbor is overflowing. On March 7th of this year, a request for proposal for design and engineering permitting was issued, and we're waiting to get those responses back. And again, that was just a request for a firm who would be interested to do the design, engineering, and permitting. That firm, when selected, or if selected, will definitely have public meetings with whatever design they come up with. Public outreach and engagement. The Lighted Boat Festival was a very large success, even though we had 30 knot winds at noon that day. It cleared up in the evening. It was a beautiful evening, and we were able to launch, instead of fireworks, we had a drone show. We had a large whale, we had crabs, we had Frosty the Snowman, and the pier was completely packed with people, and everybody, all the families and everybody really had a great time with the music, the food trucks, the restaurants, and the games and crafts for everybody. We're looking to expand some of these things. On May 17th this year, the Harbor District is going to be sponsoring a coastside ocean safety fair, which will focus on beach safety and swimming and surf safety, and also boating safety. We'll have several different SAR demonstrations from other agencies, including the Coast Guard, the Sheriff's Department, the Fire Department, Maverick Surf Rescue, and several other agencies and groups, and that will sponsor and address and raise awareness for coastside ocean safety. We're looking to address the rash of deaths we've had recently at Cow Ranch State Beach and other beaches where people are getting washed into the surf and unable to recover. And then also, last year alone, people have gone out in small craft that were not ready or properly outfitted and broke down and had to be towed back in or assisted by the Harbor Patrol to come back in safely. And we're trying to cut down on the need for that service. We're also, not this year, but in future years, we would like to develop and bring back the 4th of July celebration. Maybe not for fireworks, but another drone show. Pillar Point Community Crab Feed. Actually have a crab feed in the harbor itself. The same thing with a Pillar Point Community Fish Fry. And then we've had informal witches paddles and Santa paddles. We'd like to work with those organizers and increase participation, make it a little bit more formal, and have safety aspects added to make it a bigger and more enjoyable event for more people to get out and get on the water and enjoy kayaks and paddle boards. And we're looking forward to that. So increasing our public outreach and public use of the facilities. Beyond that, that's what we're doing at the Harbor District. And I'll turn it over to, if I can, to Catherine Slater Carter, the president of the board, for a closing comment.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. I'm proud to be the president of this new version of our harbor district that's been working together for about 5 or 6 years to to improve the safety and public access and public transparency for the harbor district. We represent the entire county. We have 5 different districts. And so we have to be, we not only have to be, but our responsibility and our pleasure is to represent and make the harbor district facilities available for the entire county. We have restarted at Oyster Point, which we operate and manage, a Night of Lights boat show. And it's going to be happening again this year too. It's a beautiful little harbor with ferry service, and I would highly recommend, if you want to get over to Oakland, to drive out, park, and take the ferry to Oakland, have your fun times, and then come back and take a short drive home. Save the bridge, save driving on the bridge. But our purpose as a harbor district and serving the entire county is to teach people about ocean safety. A lot of people don't understand about it. Those of us on the coast, we often put our kids in swimming lessons at a very early age, but a lot of people don't, and they're unaware of the dangers of the ocean. And then restoring the environmental aspects of the harbor district is a high priority as well. So please keep an eye. Our meetings are open to the public and on Zoom, and we'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there comments? Shall I do the public first and then let's go to the public first. So I'll take comments from the public first. Are there any in the room?
I'll make a comment.
And could you please announce your
My
name?
name's Todd Porth, and I'm a resident here, actually on Avenue Alhambra.
Spell your last name.
Korth. Grew up in the Bay Area. My father was a homicide detective in the city of San Jose for many, many years. My nephew actually is a police officer in San Jose, and I don't know if anybody's actually been the victim of a crime. But my wife just got back about a month ago from having to testify down in San Mateo County. Some criminal actually broke into the neighbor's house or tried to break into the car, ran down the street, ran in on our property, and then we had to chase the guy out down the street. And finally, the cops converged on the guy. And so he sat in jail for a while. And I researched the guy online, and he had a rap sheet and included breaking in, pushing in some elderly woman's door. And this is why the Harbor Commission, when they come out with this Burnham Strip parking lot, I went to one of the Harbor Commission meetings, spoke out against that. Now I understand there's a request for proposal to actually build this thing. I think that is a really naive and improper thing to do. The obvious solution to any parking problem would be to the west side of Highway 1 that the harbor already owns. Why not expand the parking lot there? But to build a parking structure on the Burnham Strip just invites, more potential for criminal activity, et cetera. Then you're going to have the issue with having to have a light on Highway 101. So you're going to increase traffic congestion. And there's a number of people, 2 people came to my house today to inform me that this meeting was going on, and they're neighbors in the area, and they completely think against it. And sometimes when the citizenry comes to a meeting like this and speaks out against a proposal, the government officials make it feel like you're being heard. But what I have seen in practice is that the government doesn't listen and enacts things that just it is in complete defiance of what the public intent is, of what the public desire is. So I highly think it's a completely bad idea for this whole parking structure thing on Burnham Strip. It's a completely bad idea. And I would hope that the government and all branches would listen to the citizenry and put a big X through that, build the parking on the west side of Highway 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. I just realized that I skipped the questions. This is the first time I'm presiding over a meeting, and I forgot to ask if there are questions for Jim or Catherine before we started the public comment. So I'd like to backtrack and see if there are any questions from the council, and then we'll go back to the public comment. Gus?
And the public has questions too.
Right, so I'll then go to the public after we've gone around the council.
Thank you. First, thanks. That was a great presentation. I was looking through the documents for the LAFCO meeting because I saw you guys are on the agenda for that. And first, want to commend you on the work you've done on transparency. I wish all government agencies were as committed to it as it appear you guys are. My question is, I noticed the LAFCO feedback seemed to be that operational revenues that they're not enough to cover the expenses, and that turns out to be okay because the property tax revenue more than offsets the gap. But they were recommending that you look for more operational revenue, and my question is that the motivation for suggesting taking over operation of the airports? Because that wasn't an intuitive leap for me for why I would be suggesting that. And it didn't seem like the airport people were super enthusiastic about the idea. So I was just sort of curious what the motivation was for suggesting that as a strategy.
Great question. Again, thank you. LAFCO published a draft MSR back in November, December, and provided it to the district, and they were going to vote on it back then, but they didn't get to it on their agenda. So the district took an opportunity to review that MSR and provide feedback to LAFCO on their draft MSR of the district. In the draft MSR, as stated in previous MSRs, it rated the district as a zero sphere of influence. And the Harbor District, and Catherine, please correct me if I misunderstood or I don't state this clearly, the Harbor District was putting out an idea that what we do with the harbors, we're doing fantastic with the harbors. We have more capabilities. And if you want to get, instead of giving us a zero sphere of influence, you can always increase our responsibilities. Again, this was an idea. It was not a request. It was not an ask. It was just putting out to LAFCO and everybody else who reads those LAFCO reports that we're doing a good job and we could do more with those airports. We're not pushing for that. That was the only reason we put that in there. Not necessarily to actually run those airports, but just letting everybody know we can do more.
Gotcha.
I'd like to add, Jim's correct. He absolutely is on point about the LAFCO thing. I believe, and I know my other board members support it, because drive in, look at our harbor, and then drive past the falling down broken buildings on the airport. That's our emergency services area that's supposed to be provided by the county. There is one small double horse-sized trailer there for one emergency services. There's not much else there. I believe with the right fundraising that we can do, that we could make this critical emergency services area more valuable to the community. I've lived here 47 years on the coast, and the roads have gotten worse and worse and worse for fires and emergency services, tsunamis, whatever. We need a place, and the airport is it, where the people on the Midcoast can come to for safety and emergency supplies. The other thing that I've been hearing from folks at the airport is that San Carlos Airport is going to be closing down some of its services. And yet it's an important part for small airplanes and for people, again, emergency services. It's a completely different kind of facility than SFO, which is international and giant planes. I know we can do better. Coyote Point, Todd Korth said he'd been his dad had been a sheriff here. I grew up in Belmont. My dad sailed in and out of Coyote Point. It's been in need of dredging for 50 years. And it's difficult to sail in and out of. It needs some reconfiguration of its docks and slips. And I know this is the district that can do it. We have the trained staff. We have a wonderful admin staff. We've got our finances doing, like you heard, 5 years of awards. And I'm very disappointed that the county, so out of hand, dismissed the needs of the people on the Midcoast. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Chris, did you have questions for Jim?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you both, Jim and Catherine, for coming and talking to us and presenting this. It's obvious that you guys have a great deal of work on your plates in terms of all the different projects. Jim, at one point when you were talking about property acquisition, you used the phrase strategic plan. And there have been questions. I'm wondering, and I've had questions from members of the public about, is there actually a strategic plan for the Harbor District? Is there a master plan that guides what you guys are doing? Because the feeling is that, especially with regard to property acquisitions, that these things kind of come up opportunistically. It seemed like you were contacted and responded quickly to the offer of a property for sale, which now is quickly becoming a real project through the release of your RFP, and suddenly people feel like something they didn't know about is going to turn into a parking lot in their front yard and in their view corridor in a very short order. And so the question really is, what is the master plan that guides the Harbor District?
The district does have a strategic plan. It's over 5 years old now, and it was developed at a time where there was a lot of disagreement within the district. A new strategic plan we began several months ago. We had a public session on the initial start of that strategic plan a few months ago, and then we're having another public session workshop on the strategic plan, I think on April 8th, where we're going to take all the input that we received and put together from first workshop and all the public comment and other comments that we received, and put it back out in a kind of a draft format, again, for more comment and more refinement. With respect to the property purchases, you're not wrong on the opportunities. Didn't necessarily go looking for it, but when the opportunity presented itself, and given the fact that the harbor's pretty much landlocked now with a private property or structures, the district needs room to grow, so we took advantage of those. And we can also take advantage of the space to improve services that we provide to the coast side and the people who visit and use the harbor and the harbor area. And then with respect to the parking lot, we're in like raise your hand. This is an idea we have phase. We haven't planned anything. We haven't designed anything. We know that we want to maintain the view corridor. We know we want to maintain the natural look of the area. We know we want to maintain security, and we know dark sky. So there's all those different things we know we want to do. How that looks and what it will finally look like, we have no idea. And we don't know if one will ever be built, because maybe we won't be able to design something that meets everybody's needs or meets the majorities of everybody's needs. These are just an idea that we're putting out there to get public input, and we've received both positive and negative public input on the idea of adding the additional lot. I know, if I could, going back to the LAFCO report that Gus brought up with the tax dollars and the revenue dollars, the revenue dollars are not up to 50% of our revenue. However, the Harbor District does a lot of activities and provides a lot of services that aren't revenue generating services, such as search and rescue safety, providing in parks and recreation areas, providing safe harbor and clean harbor, and parks and trails, all those different things. We don't get reimbursed, or the people who use those services in the parking don't pay for those things. That's where we bring in the non-revenue funding. Supports a lot of those activities too. So, but we are part of the strategic plan, which you'll see when we bring it back out here in April. One of the major goals I would imagine is to identify and increase the revenue producing activities for the Harbor District. Case in point, we did have one tenant who entered into a lease with the district well over 2 decades ago and got a great price. But looking at the lease and working with the tenant, it was way below market rate. And that lease payment went from $2,500 a month up close to $16,000 a month to bring it back up to market rate. And again, the tenant was willing to do it with us, which was great. But the Harbor District is the one who brought up the issues, and it was a great partnership. We're doing that with all our leases that have renewed and bringing them up to market rate. And so the district is increasing their revenues from the enterprise side. Hopefully, Chris, I answered your question also.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that there's a strategic planning effort going on. I would like to encourage you guys to include Deer Creek reroute as part of that, but also point out that some of the parking plans that you're pursuing right now, as well as other projects in the Burnham Strip, are quickly making that idea become not possible, because that reroute would necessarily have to go through the properties that you're purchasing and proposing to use for parking. So anyway, I'd like to, that's an idea that's been floating around for over 20 years now, and it would really be great to see that on a list of actionable items within the district.
Okay, all right, is that?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Connie, did you have any questions?
I'd like to, yes, and just really quickly, thank you both. Very helpful to understand, what you've done already and what you're looking to do. I think it's really great for the community to be able to hear more about that, and appreciate your transparency. I just want to follow up on what Chris was saying about the Deer Creek rerouting. So, I thought you mentioned you're just considering it at this point, but it would seem logical to me that if you're going to start doing the beach replenishment from the harbor to Surfers Beach, if you don't reroute the creek, is it just going to be a constant process that you're going to have to do? And then why wouldn't you make the Deer Creek rerouting part of that plan, so that you're not constantly having to move all the sand from the harbor over to Surfers Beach?
Thanks for the question. The requirement for the pilot project, the movement of Deer Creek would be outside the parameters of it, and would not be allowed in the pilot project. And secondly, we have to figure out the bacteria issues of Deer Creek and the TMDL issues that the State Water Board has put on Pillar Point Harbor. And part of those TMDL requirements are the pollutions that are coming down into the harbor from the creeks. So right now, Surfers Beach is not on the TMDL list. Moving that creek over to Surfers Beach may place it on the TMDL list, which we don't want. So how do we do that while also naturally filtering out the water, so that contaminations that are currently coming down during the storms don't come down and hit Surfers Beach? I look at that project as more of the WRDA 2024 project, because the cost of it, the engineering of it, that would come into the Army Corps The Army Corps built that wall with Deer Creek emptying into the harbor, knowing that it would bring in all the sand. So part of that project would be to mitigate that. And the Army Corps would then come up with a design and engineering project to be able to shift that creek over to Surfers Beach area to continue that sand down, natural movement down south.
Okay, thank you, so okay.
I just wanted to say that Deer Creek is only one of the sources of sediment in the harbor that they're dealing with.
Yes.
Yeah.
On that side of the harbor, Deer Creek is the main.
Okay, thank you.
Capistrano is a whole other issue.
Okay, Claire, I see your hand raised.
Yes, Jim, that was very useful. I feel like I know a lot more about what's going on now.
Great.
I have one quick question. A lot of this work that seems very important does seem to hinge on the Army Corps of Engineers. I have indirect personal knowledge that a great many of the proposed projects for the Corps of Engineers may not take place due to the changes in the administration. Is this what you hear, and what are the options for us?
I think we'll be okay with Princeton by the Sea. It's a project that's capped at 15 million, and it's under the Army Corps' authority, and no separate permission is needed from Congress to move forward with that project.
What about from Musk? I'm sorry.
The larger project, we're to 2024. The only thing we're going to be looking for in the next year or two is funding just to do the investigation, which should be fairly, I don't want to say easy, but we should be able to get that funding to do the investigation. Once the investigation is done, then the feasibility study will be another pot of money that will be required. But again, that's just the study. So once we do the initial cost benefit analysis, then move into the feasibility study, we're looking at 3, 4, 5 years before we'd be going back to Congress and asking for the full funding for the project. So I think we'll be okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm a very optimistic person.
Yeah, I'm not.
Scott, did you have any questions?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do have a few questions. So, for Surfers Beach, are you still considering the one shoreline proposal? Because the things that you mentioned seem to have elements of that proposal in them. But I'm wondering if you're still considering breaching the breakwaters and sort of reconfiguring, because that would actually help the part of the sand movement. As opposed to just transporting sand and allowing the same factors that cause the erosion in the first place to continue to carry it out.
I'm not a coastal engineer, but one shoreline study, if we followed the one shoreline study that was put together a few years ago, that would destroy Pillar Point Harbor and the purpose in which the harbor was designed for. So no, we're not looking at moving breakwaters, and we're not looking at placing huge holes in the breakwater of moving the sand, and forcing sand through one opening doesn't necessarily mean the sand's going to go there. So what we're trying to do through the Word of 2024 project and working with the Army Corps is to mitigate and prevent the damage in the future, so the breakwater doesn't cause the coastal erosion in the future. And that's all part of some of those offshore structures in which one shoreline put in their recommendation are good ideas. But the district, that might come into the final plan, but that would not be discussed or considered until the feasibility stage.
Okay. My other question has to do with the Princeton Shoreline project that
Yes.
you mentioned. You referred to hard structures, so is this restoration intended to be natural solutions, natural restoration strategies, or are we talking about armoring strategies?
There will be, all strategies will be considered and looked at, and the best strategy will be selected. I doubt very much that hard armoring will be a selected strategy, because that's nobody's best solution. Our intent and our hope is that we have come up with a solution that's a living shoreline with dunes and natural plants and a natural beach. And then out in the harbor itself, there'll be one linear structure that will break up the current from a counterclockwise rotation. By breaking up that counterclockwise rotation, the current will no longer strip the beach, and the beach will be able to remain in place. That structure will just be an independent structure, kind of like a underground hill in the harbor, and it'll be made of structures that are porous and have openings, and for the fish and other marine wildlife to habitate and use as habitat. That's our hope. But again, several different solutions to mitigate and prevent that damage will be brought up and considered and presented to the public before any decision is made.
Okay. My other question concerns lighting. You mentioned it several times in the context of a couple of these projects, and I noticed that lighting that was replaced down at the launch ramps a little while ago is excessively bright, much brighter than what was there before, and it no longer shines right just downward. It shines also out. I'm wondering if that's something that you could look at. I know that you're still struggling with making dark skies compliant lighting in the
Yes,
harbor.
I will commit to look into that.
Okay, that was the question. And then let's see, I had one other. You mentioned the TMDLs and, the issue of if you reroute the creek, that then it would become an issue at Surfers Beach, but it is currently an issue at the outfall where it is now. And there are people who use that. I for one, as a kayaker, do launch there sometimes. And, it means I have to walk out right from that outfall into the water, as do many people. And there's also a lot of families who use that beach.
Yes.
So I guess I'm wondering, in all this, I'd like to see, I'm wondering if there are plans to look at these issues, not just the new stuff that you're proposing, but to look at solving some of these issues that are ongoing.
Yes, and because we're on the TMDL list, we were already doing it in the past, but because now we're on the TMDL list, we have to produce annual reports on all the activities that we're doing. And the Harbor District kind of called together all the involved agencies on the coast side, from the county and other agencies involved with water quality, into kind of it's one water, then we get together and write that report as a team, and the county takes the lead, and all the different tasking from that's required by the water board through the TMDL we're doing. And it is very difficult to identify and prevent all the bacteria that's coming down those creeks, because the bacteria is coming from east of Highway 1, not west. So how to clean up the streets and clean up the sources of waters that fill those creeks that empty into the harbor are very important. Same thing with over in Princeton by the sea. Today, I'm sure there was plenty of rivers going down the harbor and everything else, bringing all the soils and oils from the road right into the harbor on all the overflows. So, and the same thing with Deer Creek today. So yes, we're working with the county and other agencies that are involved with water quality to try to find a solution to lower those bacteria. With respect to the harbor operations, we do, working with the RCD over the past several years, we do test the water underneath the boats and operations to make sure, or to test to see if anybody's pumping sewage, in raw sewage in the harbor. and all the tests have been coming back clean. And we do the same thing in the outer harbor. We also provide a pump out service for people, and there's a free pump out at the harbor itself where you drive your boat up and you can pump out your sewage tanks for free. So we're doing all that also. Every boat that comes in, all the recreational boats that have a slip in the harbor, if they have an installed marine toilet, we make sure that their overboards have a wire tie on the valve so they can't open it while they're in the harbor, and must pump it ashore. And then we provide restrooms for everybody who has a slip. They have restrooms up on shore that's only available to them and not the public.
Okay. I have one last question, and I'm going to ask this question because I've received a lot of questions from the public. And the question is, did the Harbor District consider looking to not renewing the lease that's on the Surfers Beach side that went to the RV park, and using that as public parking?
The lease renewal is not due for another 25 years.
It was just renewed this past, like just a few months ago. So the question is, why
That is
did
correct, and
you
that was
consider
because
not
we were
renewing?
working with the tenant to correct the undervaluation of the lease, and he was able to do that. We were able to work with him to increase his lease payments. He did have a lease renewable that was for another 25 years that he could have exercised.
But
Plus, and then also with respect to the revenue, the district needs revenue to operate, and that is a major source of revenue for the Harbor District.
okay, so the source of revenue was the deciding factor. Is that?
That was one of many, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So now I'd like to go.
I'd like to add to Jim's comment about that lease.
Sure. Can you be brief so we can get all the
I
public?
will be very brief. There were many things that needed to be accomplished that were in the previous 25-year lease that were never done. Things that people in the community had been upset about, like the trees between the RV park and the highway, and the pruning of the trees. In fact, we got those LCP and other environmental things accomplished through the new lease. They wouldn't have, and we had, and it, as an enterprise district, it's critical for us to have the money coming in to spend to keep the district improving. But the money wasn't the only thing. This is a visitor serving project, and it's one of the mandates under the local coastal program. We didn't want to burn any bridges with Coastal Commission by eliminating a proven visitor serving location. And so that there were, as Jim says, there were many details that all added up to doing this. Yes, the income was important, but it was not the sole driver. There were many other drivers that were part of this. And the fact that there was yet another 25-year lease on the segment, if he hadn't been willing to work with us, we couldn't have broken the lease in any event. It was a contract, and it would have meant another 25 years of under income, under achievements of the LCP and visitor serving requirements. And it wouldn't have we couldn't have used it to provide parking. In fact, Half Moon Bay eliminated many spaces of our parking on that west side parking lot when they converted it. They forced us to convert it all to handicap parking. So there had been quite a few parking spaces there, but the size and dimensions and changes because of the bathroom, we lost public parking. So like I say, there's multiple factors involved, and please don't limit it just to the money, because it's not. It was fully analyzed. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to just add one thing, and that is, you mentioned the Coastal Commission, and my understanding from the Coastal Commission is they weren't aware that you were renewing the lease until at least 2 or 3 days prior to the actual action that was taken. So I'm not sure what was happening there. But my understanding from them is that they encourage you to use that lot for visitor parking. I'd like to turn now to the public for comments. So I'll start, and thank you, Todd, for your comment earlier. Dan Haggerty.
Yeah, good evening, council members. Thank you for your report, Jim. Jim, you said tonight, you said that parking on the side of highway is illegal. I was sitting in this chair, it was approximately 2015, where the captain of the CHP was standing at this mic, and I asked him specifically, is it legal to park on the side of the road? And he told me at that time, yes, it was legal. So, you know, by saying that, that's what we said tonight, that's like putting it out of the picture. Nobody should ever consider that at all. I think that could be an option, and it can be safe. Excuse me. This idea of the parking on Burnham Strip is generally flawed for many reasons. A great impact to the community of El Granada. The concept of the harbor expanding out of their harbor area into our community just has a lot of impacts. I think that this Midcoast Community Council should call for a meeting with the county, Caltrans, GCSD, the Harbor District, to come up with a reasonable plan for replacement of Surfers Beach parking, and look at all options. With the Burnham Strip, you know, there's zoning issues, there's traffic and safety issues, lighting issues, the historic design and the purpose of the strip, and just generally bad idea issues. Community members are concerned with all the impacts. You know, I've heard from them personally. I think you're probably going to hear from them tonight. And also, I'd like you to please, you know, quantify everybody that sat through all this long presentation and these long questions and answers to give a comment, you know, please quantify that somehow. So in the future, if we talk to the county or whoever, you know, we can, you know, reference that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Others in the room? And please let us know your name.
Great. My name's Anis Iqbal. I live on Avenue Alhambra, right next door to Todd. So my driveway is on that street. And my main concern, one, I'm hearing all kinds of words like transparency. I don't see any transparency with this particular project of the parking. I've searched, I've tried to find information, and I can't find anything other than what my neighbors have told me. And then and then the only thing I found is an RFP. So it sounds like a decision has been made that a parking will go there. And now we're just talking about how it's going to be designed. My question would be, where's the study and what options have we even considered? I would expect to see, and this is actually the big concern, we live in a neighborhood. Avenue Alhambra is a neighborhood ingress and egress. We have a commercial neighborhood district that is not intended to shift traffic in high periods of tourist time or fishing time, shifting that traffic onto our neighborhood street, which has to traverse our driveways to get to this area. That can't be safe. The other thing that can't be safe is that area of Highway 1 where you cross by Sam's Shadow House is the unsafest portion of that strip. Everyone is speeding. So I don't know if you're planning to put a light, but my point is, what study has been done? I just learned this evening that you actually purchased the parcel of land that is on the west side, right by where you need the parking. Why would you force people to cross the street? Why would you force people to drive through a neighborhood to park when there's a potential logical solution? So back to the transparency point, I can't find any information. I can't find a traffic study. Jim, with all due respect, you point pictures and say, you mention a few periods of time that the parking lot's full. I live there. That parking lot is rarely full, if ever. So if it's a handful of days, I just show us the data, show us why there's a need, and show us how much this is going to potentially cost relative to other issues that we have in the neighborhood. So that's one concern. I would love to see more transparency. I learn more from my neighbors right now. I don't even know if that's right information. I'm trying to find the right information. So please share the studies that you have done. I would love to see a traffic study against what will happen to Avenue Alhambra if that's going to be the entry point for the parking, unless it's on Highway 1. Again, I can't even answer that question. There's no information available to us. So that's my call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person. Please state your name.
Horace Wonderlick. I live on Valencia. And well, as a cyclist, I was happy to see that Caltrans was going to extend the East Side bike trail north from Coronado, to Coronado, anyhow, past Surfers Beach. But I don't like that they're removing all the parking, because that just is going to shift up into our neighborhood, whether it's unofficially, as it has been in the past, or officially by having the Harbor District build a new parking lot there. And the access across Highway 1, if you're going to make it safe for those people that park there to get to the beach, you're just going to make the traffic out on Highway 1 that much worse, which will cause Ways and other services to divert them through our neighborhoods to go around it. So the Caltrans is, from the looks of it, with what I've seen of it, they're trying to cheap out on this by just restriping the street. What they should do is use their existing right-of-way on the east side of the highway to put the bike lane there and leave the parking where it is. But I'd rather not see the harbor expanding into El Granada east of the highway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you spell your last name for me, please? I didn't catch it.
W-U-N-D-E-R-L-I-C.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to comment in the room? Okay, I'll move to the Zoom.
One more.
Oh, sorry.
Michelle Duke. I also live on Valencia. I am kind of appalled at the thought of moving all the traffic off of Highway 1 into Avenue Alhambra and up into our streets. During COVID, when the beaches were shut down, people still came. They invaded the neighborhoods. We couldn't even park to go to the post office or the stores because all the parking places were taken up. And if there's a parking lot, if it fills up, that's what they're going to do. They're going to go back up into the neighborhoods. And if any time that there's any emergency or an accident or anything, and traffic backs up, everybody already comes up through Avenue Alhambra and Obispo. And when the tunnel was shut down, it took 45 minutes to an hour to go from my house, which is near Spangler's, out through the signal to get onto Highway 1. And I really would hate to see that kind of a traffic jam come back. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room? Okay, we'll move to the Zoom and I'm just going to look at the order that the hands were raised. I think Natalie Down is the first one.
Hello.
Thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to raise a couple of concerns that I had around the current plan. The current RFP has more than just kind of a hand wavy plan. It seems to be quite detailed in what's expected, and it doesn't actually clue into what the plans are for the riparian corridor, the river and the trees that surround it opposite Spanglers. So I'm really concerned that that's going to get paved over. I think that's the Deer Creek riparian corridor. In general, I'm really upset about the foraging habitat for the great blue herons and for the other animals we have that live there and live along the creek, as well as living in the grassland. And the crosswalk that's planned, there is currently a crosswalk planned. I'm not sure that was mentioned at all earlier today. There is currently a crosswalk that's part of the required part of the RFP that's listed between the two traffic lights. So between the traffic lights, so directly opposite Sam's, and this would really add to traffic, regardless of whether or not there's an emergency. People would already be coming into the neighborhood. So I would kindly ask for the crosswalk to be pulled out of the required section of the RFP into an additional survey, an additional speculation. Also, I want to go back to President Catherine Slater's comments about the harbour meeting being available to the public, open to the public. It is open to the public if you attend in person, but as yet it's not open to the public if you want to make any comment or participate remotely over Zoom. So I would really appreciate the harbour's efforts in making this meeting accessible to the public, given so much of our neighbourhood, so much of our livelihood, so much of everything we live here is controlled by the Harbour District. So it would be great if the public could actually participate in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Jane?
Hi, thank you for having this meeting. I'm against the parking lot for a number of reasons. You know, I moved here in '89, and as long as I can remember, there were banners up saying, "Save the Strip." That is a really beautiful and special piece of it's a beautiful feature for our neighborhood. We look out on it, it's wild, it's open, it's very special for us. We value that strip as part of the beauty of our neighborhood. I know the Harbor District is visitor serving for the whole county and actually for the whole world who wants to come visit the beach. The neighborhood is not bound to neighborhood or visitor serving. We have GCSD putting in a community park next door, and they've promised us that since the taxpayers paid for that, it would not be used like a state park where people come in. But I think when people come to the beach, rather than hauling all of their kids and their umbrellas and their coolers and their food down to the beach, they're going to come and use the community park. So I think that's a bad mix. But it's more concerning to me, and I'm going to discuss something nobody wants to hear, and I apologize for it. But I've been very concerned about the safety of the children, and I encourage GCSD to have some kind of office near there, so if a child feels harassed or anything, he would have a place to go and talk to an adult. They've just run a survey to have, whether we have a preschool there or children activities. And I think having a large parking lot with someone looking out that they could abduct a child and take it on the highway is a danger. So I apologize for bringing that up, but I feel like I need to speak up for the kids. I'll try to make this really short. I've spoken already, both at your meeting and last meeting, about my concerns about evacuation. It's not your responsibility, but I do think it would be a gracious thing for you to get together with CAL FIRE and CERT and talk about what we're going to do when the whole world descends upon the harbor during an emergency. Last couple comments. You mentioned at your meeting that private funds were being donated. I think in lieu of transparency, whether it's SAMS or some other entity that's giving private funds for this parking lot, we should know who that is and what advantages there will be for them. I also agree with Tom that speaking at your meetings, and I will say this very respectfully and not contentiously, the times that many of us have come to the Harbor District to give our input and ask for special consideration on topics, what I have seen happen, and I have to admit there's been only 2 issues that I've really participated heavily in. The board votes right away after hearing the public input. It isn't like we're going to go and we're going to fold that input into our decisions. It's like, no, we heard it. Okay, we're going to vote. And many of us participated in the San Francisco roundtable regarding the airport. They were so good and they rerouted their planes. And so if you're intending to become much larger, to become a port authority, I think developing the ability to work hand in hand with the community, if there's airport noise or whatever, would be really central to building a partnership with you. So I'll leave you with two questions. One I asked at your meeting, which is, can you test Deer Creek also for herbicides? Because I live at the end of Deer Creek. There's a farm and GGNRA, and those are probably using pesticides. And then the other question that I hope you'll follow up on is, who is contributing to the development of this? And the third question would be, can you route the bicycles through the neighborhood and leave the cars on Highway 1? Thank you for that. I'm sorry it was so much. And I do appreciate you coming to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Jill Grant? Jill, are you still there?
I am, but I'm wondering, are they going to answer the questions that the previous speaker asked?
I thought we would just go through the public comment. I mean, Jim, do you want to answer the questions as they go, or do you want to talk about these after everybody's commented?
Your board meeting, so I can do whatever you would like me to do.
I'm just wondering what's easiest for you.
I'm here.
Well, I thought we'd have a question session and then a
Some of the
comment.
questions I can't answer. If
Um,
there's, the funding for the project will be clearly visible and transparent. The rerouting the bikes through the neighborhood is outside the jurisdiction and ability of the Harbor District. Working with the fire department, working with the sheriff, working with CERT, would all be definitely included in any coordination or projects that we do. And I agree that if something does happen significantly on the coast side, such as a fire that forces everybody down off the hillside, people are going to come to the harbor, and we will have to figure out how to transport people out of that harbor.
so we
And
still
I
have.
brought that up with Department of Emergency Services.
Okay, so we still have quite a few hands raised. I think maybe what would be most efficient is to just go through all of the comments, and then maybe you could keep track of any questions and anything that you'd like to respond to, and then you could respond at the end. Is that okay?
That'd be fine, and I'll put my email in the chat, so anybody who would like to discuss it further past tonight, they can always send me an email.
Okay. All right. Jill, did you have comments, questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions and I have a comment, so I guess I'll just run them all together. So for the harbor overflow parking, I didn't see any alternatives being considered in the RFP. For example, why aren't they considering the harbor property on the south side of Highway 1 between Sam's Chowder House and that little blue house, which is right by existing parking? And then visitors wouldn't need to cross a busy highway. It's the same access route. It would be less impactful on traffic. Or why not use the extra parking at the first Keaton Earham RV park? It's located right at Surfers Beach. It's right at the recreational trail. It's right at the jetty. Has a 24-hour attendant, plenty of space. Today, there's only 3 RVs parked there. So maybe you could consider using that for parking when there's not RVs there. You could go back to the approved 1987 use permit, which allowed a 50-car day use parking lot and RV overnight parking on the property, because this is the best fit to mitigate the loss of parking for those who use the recreational trail, jetty fishing, and Surfers Beach. That's the whole purpose of this new parking lot. It's not for overflow boat parking. It's not for PG&E staging areas. It's for this Caltrans appeal. So I hope you consider these alternatives in the RFP. And I'm also wondering why the harbor needs to solve Caltrans' problem. Why can't Caltrans use their existing right-of-way at the informal Surfers Beach parking lot? It's the most logical place for the loss of parking. and they don't have to do anything except grade and gravel a lot. As for the Harbor District transparency, I could not attend your February 19th Harbor meeting. I can't attend any of them because, like many other people in the community, they occur at 10 a.m. on a weekday, a work day, and the Harbor District refuses to allow the public to participate via Zoom. But I listened to the meeting afterwards, and I have to say I agree with El Granada resident Laurel Frischman's statement. She said, "This is our side of the highway, and that is the public side of the highway, and that is how we feel." Also, I've worked with PG&E on the coast for 15 years. Most of their days start before sunrise. They arrive at the parking area, could be on the Sousa property above Half Moon Bay High School at the airport or in a remote farmer's field. But those PG&E staging areas are busy from before sunrise throughout the day into the night with large boom trucks, shifts of 10, 12, 15, even 24 hours to get the job done. So I can't even believe you're considering using it as a PG&E staging area. That's a huge impact to a small community with the additional lighting. I hope you also seriously consider the environmental impacts to the community, the traffic impacts directing all those cars onto residential streets of El Granada. You say no large commercial vehicles, but the new overflow parking as planned includes parking of PG&E large boom trucks, commercial vehicles in a protected view corridor. I hope you honor the LCP protected buffer from Deer Creek. I hope you consider the impacts to wildlife. You have monarch butterflies coming through there. You have yellow-faced bumblebees, coast garter snakes, herons, hawks, owls, etc. This loss of habitat from the removal of wildlands on the strip to create overflow parking, I do not agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Matthew?
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I would like, as prior speakers have said, to know why they picked the half the size Burnham Strip property to build a parking lot instead of the parking lot the property that they purchased that is northwest of Sam's, which is more than twice the size of the Burnham Strip property, would not require any ingress, egress, traffic studies, or crosswalk that has to span a 20-foot elevation delta and would never be ADA in order to get people from Avenue Alhambra to the coast. Please don't suggest that this is for Surfers Beach. Being a surfer and having lived here for 30 years, I can guarantee you that no one will walk the 2,500 feet to go from where Avenue Alhambra parking lot would be to Surfers Beach. Surfers are lazy. They are not going to walk that far. And Jim said that there was no way that he could coordinate with a bike path, but you guys own that property now. If there was going to be a bike path that followed the entire Burnham Strip, wouldn't that allow Caltrans to have their required bike path moved from the Highway 1 to essentially a frontage that trail that starts where the current bike path ends at Coronado? Anyway, it all feels suspect. Why this is all being expedited and not with any sort of transparency. Thank you for your time.
Could you tell me your last name, Matthew? It just says M on the screen.
My last name is McEachin, MCEACHEN.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person I see is Maureen. Maureen Johnston.
I'm not, okay, thank you. I also live in El Granada. I've lived on the coast side for 50 years. So I've seen it grow busier and busier. I live on Sonora Avenue. Anytime that there's traffic on the highway, people come cruising down my street. This is really unsaid. I do not want a ton of people parking their boats or the light pollution and the other pollution that's involved with that. We don't need those people in El Granada. You have, stick to your side of the frickin' road. It doesn't need to be on the El Granada community side of the road. Please, this is unreasonable for you to put that burden on our streets, which are already pretty marginal. We don't need more on our streets, and we don't need the people. We don't need the light pollution or any of the other stuff. We have such a beautiful area. This is what the strip was all about. That is what Burnham wanted for El Granada, was it to be a natural place that was like a haven for the people to rest and relax, to enjoy our beautiful coastside. That does not include lights and any number of people that do not belong here. Make the parking lot on the west side of the road. Don't have those people taking their lives in their hands, trying to cross the road, and don't bring more people onto El Granada streets so that they can pick up the pieces for the people that don't make it all the way across. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Steve Terry?
Yes, hi. Thank you. This is Steve Terry from El Granada. And yeah, thank you, Jim. Hi, thanks for doing the presentation. It was neat. And oh, hi, Catherine. Thank you for also attending. I appreciate it. It seems like you guys are doing a lot of good stuff, but I'm going to talk about the parking lot just like everybody else. And Jim, you noted earlier that the district's interest is in creating revenue producing projects. And I guess this is since you have to create most or all of your own operating expenses, that makes sense. But in this regard, it seems like you're really like a merchandising concern. And so with the parking lot on the east side, the optics are that you're looking to preserve the west side for some higher revenue activity. Like, for example, a Sam's North. That's kind of what it feels like to me, and I suspect everybody else. When all the logic suggests that the west side is more appropriate for parking and more practical. So I feel like you're regarding the west lot like you did the new RV lot, where you highlighted tonight that the new RV lot, it's visitor serving and you need the revenue, you noted. And so I feel like, and probably others do too, that you're going to treat the west lots just like the RV lot, where it could be another or a third RV lot, who knows? So, and furthermore, I watched a replay of the November board meeting where it was stated that the purchases, that's where you approve the purchase, that's where the purchases were approved by the board for those parcels. And it was stated that all the lots are being purchased for overflow parking. And it was specifically asked, are there other projects in mind being considered? And it was stated, no, there aren't. We're just considering parking. So I would think that you would want to, the board's direction is to include all those parcels for consideration for parking. So can you state, so my first question that I hope you can respond to at the end of this, these people speaking is, can you state specifically that the west parcels are also considered for parking, or are they being considered for something else, like maybe a higher revenue resource? That's my number one. Number two is, I'm asking, is there any intent to do an EAR for this? Because people have noted traffic issues, which would be horrible, especially if there's a light there. It'll be like the Limos Farms on Highway 1 or Frenchman's Creek Light, where traffic just stops forever. And there's a crosswalk. There's a crosswalk that has been shown on some of your drawings, but I didn't see it on the drawing tonight. The crosswalk would slow down traffic a lot and be a problem. Cutting into the berm, is that a railway line? Is that the Ocean Shore Railway line? I don't know. And then much of what you're doing might be regarded as piecemealing, all these things. And someone else had mentioned the riparian corridor on Burnham Strip. So my question is, number two, if you could respond to is, is there an intention to produce an EIR? And I understand the Harbor District is the lead agency on this, and I don't know if I don't know if there's a plan to try to neg deck it or not, but it seems like there's enough issues here to force an EIR. And then my third comment is really for MCC. So I think someone else stated this. I would like to see MCC take really a broader lead in addressing the parking lost from the Caltrans project, and any parking, and noting that any parking that Harbor District creates would be great, but will address little, if at all, any of the parking at Surfers Beach, what the previous commenter made, because all that's down at the south end, and all the parking loss down there is going to push that traffic up into like Wilkinson School and El Granada School and the neighborhood roads up there. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your giving me the time to talk.
Thank you, Steve. Laurel Frischman.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to give our input. And I'm pretty much in agreement with a lot of what is being said by the people in the local community. I've lived here since 2008, and I went to the meeting in February also. And afterwards, I drove that little bit of property there that you guys want to put this parking lot on, and I realized how huge it is. It is incredibly huge, and I imagined it being paved over, and my stomach, I just wanted to throw up. So it's not something that is sitting well with me. Let's not pave paradise. I mean, all of the comments are making about the riparian areas as well, and the environmental, and just the beauty of it, and it being on the resident side. They're all very valid. When Matthew mentioned about people walking, the surfers walking a long way, it's not just the surfers that won't do that walk. It's the people carrying their picnic gear and their tents and their chairs and whatnot to try to go and enjoy the beach. They're not going to walk that distance. They're going to find another way to park closer, and it's probably going to be up my street. And if I know that the harbor is often trying to purchase little bits of property here and there for various reasons. And I'm wondering, was this property that was purchased along this strip purchased specifically with the intent of going through with this project, or for what else, for what other reasons? And I also want to know, what were the other options that were considered, the other locations that were considered, and why they were not deemed appropriate for additional parking. Caltrans, that's another thing. I like the idea of putting the bikes on our side, on the east side, and letting the parking continue, but I know that you guys, well, you may have some say in that you deal with Caltrans as well. So anyway, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And I would hate to see that beautiful bit of El Granada be destroyed by parking. And thank you so much for letting me speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Laurel. Melinda McNaughton.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I do have to say that I'm in agreement with a lot of things that the community has stated tonight. When I first moved here about 24 years ago, I saw that the public was fighting to save the strip constantly up until the GSESG bought half of it. And I know that a lot of our community does not want to see a parking lot on the strip. I am concerned about the traffic for the entire coast, especially if there's gridlock coming in and out of El Granada there, and with a crosswalk to Sam's. I also question the motivation for the crosswalk to Sam's, and if it would be publicly funded, and if there's an ethical issue there. I'm concerned about parking lot lights disrupting the corridor view and the causing light pollution. I appreciate the Harbor District's considerations of dark sky ordinance lighting and considering permeable concrete. And yet we also have to consider the historic design and purpose of the strip and the reason it was originally put there, and also the habitat that's currently living there now. And I would hate to see that also destroyed. I let's see what else I wanted to talk about. Yeah, the crosswalk, got that. I think that thank you for presenting this as an idea, like you said, Jim, to the public. Yet I do see that the public input tonight is almost 20 people opposed. And I just want that to be strongly recorded on record. And I also want to say at the last Harbor District meeting, there were at least 5 or 6 of us trying to talk to the Harbor District to ask them if they would bring this to the larger community of El Granada so that more people and even the coast side would be aware of it, because I didn't feel like a lot of people were aware of it. So we've been talking to a lot of neighbors and actually did bring to a lot of people to the meeting tonight. So I think there needs to be more publicity and transparency about this proposal before contractors are set up to follow through with making bidding. So anyway, thank you for your listening to our input tonight, and I hope that this time some of it gets listened to, because at the last meeting it sounded like we were not going to have any kind of input listened to. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Melinda. Jeff? Jeff Mingate?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I guess there's a perk to being at the end. I think I'm one of the last ones here. And in the interest of brevity, since all the other residents have already voiced my concerns and said it way better than I could, I'll just say I disagree with the harbor overflow parking being added to our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Sid Young?
Thank you. Jim, thank you for coming to the meeting. I appreciate all the information. I did watch the last Harbor District meeting. You're doing a great job, and congrats on finally getting the beach replenishment project to begin. As far as community outreach and engagement, San Mateo County Harbor District public meetings, I hope this is a question, so write it down. Please explain the decision to hold your meetings midday when many working constituents cannot attend your meetings in person. Also explain the policy of not permitting Zoom attendees to participate as other meetings allow. Public comments are only allowed in person or in writing, but those are not read in full during the meeting. And I don't like the lack of transparency on any of that. So I hope we'll get a good explanation from you. Regarding the potential of the east side parking lot, I'm I live in Moss Beach, so it's not going to affect me completely, except I'm totally opposed to seeing a crosswalk that benefits Sam Chowder House plunked down in the middle of the highway. It's already bad enough with all the jaywalking surfers that go across the highway, but to have people coming from a east side parking lot because Caltrans is taking away the Sam's ad hoc parking on the shoulders of Highway 1. I just don't want to see a crosswalk there. And I'd like to see the traffic study. So I don't think you guys got one, but maybe you did. Anyway, maybe you could comment on if you got a traffic study or not. And then why should public money be spent to provide Sam's a parking lot in the first place? And who's going to police auto break-ins? Everybody knows that that's where people go to break into cars. There's cars parked along the beach, all up and down Highway 1. There's always notices of car break-ins in parking lots by beaches. So are you going to have surveillance? Or are you going to have a parking lot attendant collecting money from people that park there? What's the plan for that? Thank you. Those are my questions. I'm sure there'll be more public meetings on this because it really wasn't noticed very well to the general public, and who could attend anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid. Are there any other public comments? I don't see any. Do members of the council have any comments?
I just, that was a lot of questions to throw at you, Jim. I hope that wasn't too overwhelming, but this is obviously an issue.
Very welcome.
That's really resonant for folks because, you know, it touches on a place that represents a lot of beauty for people.
Any other council members have comments?
I don't think any additional comments beyond what was already asked and want to give them a chance to respond.
Okay, I actually do have some comments and I'm hesitant because I'm chairing the meeting, but I'm going to throw them out there anyway. My concerns are, from what I'm hearing and from what I know about the proposal, I'm concerned about impermeable surfaces, adding to stormwater issues. I'm concerned about limiting public participation and the ability of the public to comment and participate in Harbor District meetings and to participate in providing feedback on these projects. I'm concerned about just the parking proposal overall and how quickly it's been sort of pushed forward without adequate public input. So those are my concerns. And I'm also concerned just about transparency and
hey,
sorry, is someone?
Can we ask the whole community to mute themselves and control it so this doesn't happen? Maybe we all be helpful. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Is there, okay. I will leave it at that, but I think you heard a lot of concerns tonight. So, Jim, do you want to, I'm sure you have a list. Are there things that you'd like to say in response to any of these?
I just, yes, and thanks for the comments. They are appreciated, they are acknowledged, and they are considered. With respect to how the Harbor District conducts its meetings, all those questions or concerns need to be raised with the Harbor Commission and not me as the general manager. The president of the board runs the meetings under her direction, and I follow those directions. With respect to Mr. Terry's comments, he wanted us to state why the west parcel is not being considered. The west parcel is being considered, but in the strategic plan development meeting, again, which was public, open to the public, we were looking at and talking about that and reserving those pieces of property for possible revenue generating. And what that means, we don't know yet. Though that's further conversations down the road, but we do have to look at how to increase revenues coming into the harbor. The second questions he had was environmental reviews, studies, traffic studies. Yes, we plan on doing traffic studies, environmental review studies, and all the required studies. I'm not aware of a checklist of all the required studies that are that will be necessary, and that's the contractor we hire will be responsible to identify those studies and to carry out those studies. Laurel's questions, was the property bought specifically for parking? No, the property was bought, it came with the two lots on the Burnham Strip were part of a package that included the parking, the land on the west side of Highway 1. No specific plan was thought of or decided upon the use of either one of those parcels. Again, that's being worked on and developed as we work through the needs that are being identified through the development of the strategic plan. And again, that'll be a public meeting. It will be broadcast via Zoom, and public comment will be definitely encouraged and welcome in the development of that plan. A lot of comments about the crosswalks being put in for SAMs. The major reason for this project overflow lot is for the overflow of fishermen that launched their boats at the Pillar Point launch, and that crosswalk would be coming across shortly, a very short walk on the coastal trail from the boat launch, not necessarily a crosswalk for SAMs. It's a crosswalk for the fishermen and the crews to walk across Highway 1 safely and get to the coastal trail, Hotel Beach, Surfers Beach, the breakwater, and the boat launch. Sid had several, again, Sid concerned about the Zoom meeting. Please come or talk about or send me your concerns on email, and I'll bring those up to the board at our next meeting. You have not seen a traffic study. That is correct. That'll be part of the development of the plan. And this is not a parking lot for SAMs. It is a parking lot for overflow from the harbor. Stormwater is also a big concern of the Harbor District. We want to make sure the stormwater is handled appropriately, as we do not want to add to the TMDL issues in the harbor itself. Public comments at meetings, again, we'll address those to the Harbor District at their board meetings. And transparency, I just want to stress that this idea is being brought up at the very beginning stages that we're thinking about it to get that public input. The district has not been planning this for decades or even several months. We came up trying to figure out how to solve the overflow parking and keep the trucks and trailers out of the neighborhoods, so that when Highway 1 does close down for parking, our trucks and trailers will have somewhere else to go besides the neighborhoods. Now we're trying to figure out where to do that. And the closest one, again, reserving the lots on the west side for revenue producing activities of what we don't know what that might be. We'll have public meetings on that. We needed parking for the fishermen that fish out of Pillar Point Harbor and the launch ramp. That's why it was done. We're at the very beginning stages. And as we bring on a contractor, even more public meetings will be held, more public notification will be put out. And again, no decisions have been made. Yeah, all the comments I've made note of them.
Thank you. Catherine? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for coming and giving your comments. We'll go back through this meeting and take notes. And we'll make sure to put them in a more easily answered information sheet. Many of these issues I wish we had control of. I will tell you, I spent close to a year working on appeal to the Coastal Commission. I asked many, many people to write letters to the Coastal Commission about the loss of parking on Highway 1. Dan Haggerty showed up. A few other people wrote letters. No one from the community. And I had put notes out, not a lot of them, but notes out on Nextdoor and in other public forums. Nobody showed up to support it. So the Coastal Commission did say that Caltrans has to provide 70 parking places. I was asking for 300 or somewhere hoping for 150. But we didn't get it. The problem, the county planning commission voted to get rid of the parking on Highway 1. The county planning commission. The board of supervisors didn't make any comment. They didn't see a problem either. So it was the county and Coastal Commission and Caltrans specifically, who didn't want to take care of our parking needs. I suggest everybody talk to the Caltrans folks and our electeds, not only for the county, but for the state, because this is this is a treasure, and it's a state treasure protected under the Coastal Act. So please get a hold of our elected representatives who can do something. We have a very narrow scope of what we can do as the Harbor District. And I look forward to seeing your support on getting some good plans here. I hear some good ideas. Let's go for it. And Claire, I have to tell you, I love your kitty's tail behind you.
He's on the table now.
Yeah, well, it was behind you just a minute ago. It was so cute. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And I will ask Jim to put a discussion about the time of our meetings on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for your presentation and for patiently sitting through all of this with us to the end, and for attempting to answer everybody's questions and concerns.
Anytime. I live in
thank
this
you,
neighborhood
Catherine.
too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you both. We'll now move on to the rest of the agenda, which is the CRISP Coastal Resiliency Infrastructure Strategic Plan update that Gus is going to graciously provide to us.
Yeah, so it's 9:17. So do you want me to do this tonight?
How much time does it take? Are we talking?
I'm sharing somebody else's slides and
It's
just
about-
gonna talk about,
About 10 slides though, right?
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
More than
I-
20 minutes?
that's-
Oh, God, no. I'm not gonna take more than 20 minutes.
Let's go for it.
Okay.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, do I have the ability to share a screen?
We still have 32 people online.
All right, well, hope everybody's interested in talking about infrastructure. Share. Alright. So first of all, not my deck, so it's
Understood.
back on the deck. So I'm just gonna talk about a few of the slides. So there was an update Ray Mueller held in his office last week on how things are going with CRISP. So as just a framing thing for this discussion, I know this isn't the first time I think that there's been some discussions about what are the infrastructure needs of the coast, and people have done work on it, so on and so forth. In the end, this entire discussion comes down to money. Like let's all be clear about, if there's money to do things, things will happen, and if there's not, it won't. Like it is that basic. So what I think was better about this, what I think what's going on with this CRISP thing that I think is better than other efforts that have happened in the past, is starting from how do we organize this around getting money to do things, as opposed to focusing more on things and idealism and what we'd all love to see in a perfect world, and then later on trying to deal with the money issue. Like this project, this approach, I think, is a little bit more, let's start with the money and figure out what we can do given what money might be available. I think that is much more realistic and much more likely to actually lead to some things actually happening. So with that said, I'm gonna fly through some of these slides if I can figure out how to make this. Okay, that's stuff we don't need to worry about. So the kind of three-step process here was first coming up with what are all the projects people want to do or might be in some kind of process already, coming up with how to prioritize them, and the prioritization was very much organized around the money issue, which again is more realistic than coming up with some perfect world prioritization that is not tethered to how we get money to actually do anything. Again, much more realistic. And then they have worked on a kind of GIS dashboard where you can kind of see what all projects are. There is a link for it. I don't think it's in this presentation, but I can look for it and try to maybe put it out there on the website or something.
Can people hear you?
I don't know.
Yeah, I can hear him.
Oh, yeah, I can hear him just fine. It's
What is
great.
What
Okay,
does
great.
GIS stand for?
I can't remember what it stands for, but it's like geolocating data. So just being able to locate things physically on the
map viewer.
Yeah, map viewer. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here are all the kind of critical infrastructure sectors. I think for us as Midcoast folks, it's water, transportation, and communications. I think are kind of the big three for us. But there's obviously a wide range of things that fall under infrastructure. This was the kind of timeline. There's been this. We're past 1, 2, 3. I think we're actually around here at somewhere between 4 and 5. I think the projects have been categorized. They got 105 submissions of projects. So the categorization that they came up with is first what they call national priorities, which basically means money from the federal government, which mostly means, since this is kind of stuff we're dealing with is mostly disaster related, mostly means FEMA. FEMA has extremely narrow and non-flexible guidelines about what they are willing to pay for. So that's why there aren't that many in that bucket, because there aren't that many things that actually fit FEMA's guidelines. On top of that, you may have noticed that the federal government is going through some stuff lately. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what will or will not even be available, even for things that actually do meet their guidelines. This category B, local priorities, these are the projects that could get conceivably funded by state, local, even some nonprofit or foundation stuff. Basically all the sources that are not federal sources. Make sense? Awesome. Okay. So the national and local priorities. So the category A, that's your national stuff, national funding. Category B is your state and local funding. There was a lot that could be done under FEMA that relates to water and transportation, a little bit less on some of these other things. Category B, a lot more we could do on communications and transportation, not necessarily as much with water. And then it was kind of going to just doing a deeper dive into category A. They put a bunch of work into kind of setting up the process to start writing. There's a lot of work to write these grant things. They're federal ones in particular, a ton of work. They're very, very specific, again, for the things that they require. So, but they have put together a team to work on that. Category B, these are the state and locals. Went into a little bit of a deep dive on that. Okay, so we got into a little bit about San Mateo County versus the rest of California. San Mateo faces slightly different, has a different risk profile than California overall. This is a categorization of all the actual disaster, like declared disasters in California over, I think, 1954 to 2024. And this is kind of a frequency graph of that. So floods, number 1 thing, fire, number 2, severe storms, number 3, and earthquakes. So you can see that's the major stuff. Everything else is kind of rounding error on those 4 things. This is a little graph of the emergencies per year. You can notice there is definitely a sort of upward trend here, and it's not really linear. It's accelerating in recent times. Fires are the things that are increasing the fastest. These are declarations by county, and this is specifically fire. See, Southern California seems to be burning a lot these days, not just recently. This was getting at how much money exists for, I'm pretty sure this was federal stuff, but there's a ton of money for fire, ton of money for biological stuff, and not so much for flood. Even though we've got more, flooding was the most common thing, but the disaster money seems to be heavily skewed toward fire, even though we experience a lot of floods. Then I actually remember what this slide was trying to actually, oh, I see, this was matching like frequency with like how much these things cost. So water is both the most frequent. So if we saw the water stuff was always the biggest column, it's also the most expensive thing to have to be dealing with. And then we had healthcare. Anyway, it's trying to match like what's the highest lever based on frequency versus cost. Then we get into San Mateo specifically. So we've been looking at California as a state overall. Here is San Mateo again. Floods the highest thing, but we obviously experience storms here in a way relative to other risks that other places in California do not. And it's kind of, again, showing you that next to the state overall. We don't, you'll notice, and there'll be another slide about this. Fire isn't something that actually has touched us as much as it's touching everybody else.
Right.
And remember, that's where, particularly at the federal level, all the money's all slated for fire, and it just isn't the thing that touches us the most here in San Mateo. Yes, Kimberly?
Just biological, is that like COVID? What does that represent?
That's biological, basically like, yes, like disease and stuff like that.
Got it.
So there was that slide earlier that showed quite a bit of money for that too. That's all the COVID stuff is really what that is. All right, so California's biggest risks are fires, floods, and storms, but San Mateo has a different profile. We are very dominant in floods and storms, but not fires. So we have to think about that when we think about where we're trying to get money from and for what. Let's see, that was your 5-minute summary of that meeting.
So
Questions? Yes.
I would like to know from your perspective, attending the meeting, what you felt, sounds like the key takeaways were the flood and the storms. Were there other key takeaways not apparent in these slides that you
Other key takeaways
are worth highlighting?
Slides. I mean, I think the stuff that wasn't exactly in the slides was kind of more what I was talking about how this discussion was really focused on how do we get money? That was basically the stuff. How do we get money and from where?
So there was agreement on what the priorities are. It's just a matter of how do you fund the solutions? I think there was a pretty broad agreement that the way they prioritized the projects and the way they bucketed them was organized around where we're likely to get money from, and that is different from how it's been done in the past. I think that it was more an abstract discussion of what do we just want most. And I do think it is just much more realistic to do it this way, even though it's not the perfect world solution, because there's some things that we would want more than other things, but nothing happens unless there's money, period. And these projects, like this sort of stuff, is just too expensive. The county doesn't have that kind of money it would take to do these projects on its own, so we are limited in where we can get money from other places. Like I said, the federal government's going through a lot of things. It's very narrow in what it's willing to fund. The state is also, is coming off a year where they had a huge deficit, yada yada. So they're not exactly flinging around a lot of money either. So it's going to be just a hyper competitive environment. Everybody else, we're not the only county doing this. We have 50 plus other counties in California and the rest of the country. We have to remember that here on the Midcoast, we are 1/50th of the county of San Mateo, which itself is 1/50th of the counties in California, which itself is 1/50th of the United States of America. I mean, in number of states terms. So just the level of competition to get any of this money is going to be extreme. And so that's why I think you have to take a hard-nosed look at what can we get any money for, and that's how we'll get something actually done, as opposed to what has happened, I think, mostly in the past, which is a lot of wish list stuff, which then never goes anywhere because there's any money to do it. So So I want to ask others if they have questions, but I also, just because of what you just said, was there any distinction between short-term planning and long-term planning for some of
Yes,
these?
so that also wasn't in there. Yes, kind of like what are the sort of lower hanging, that's this kind of combination of what can you get money for, what are the lower hanging fruit type things that you could get done faster versus slow. That stuff is all also worked into how they prioritize.
So for instance, if you don't have money for something for the next 3 years, then maybe you plan for something, that is realistically accomplished in the next 7 years or 10 years.
Right. Yeah, so yes, like the number one prioritization thing was just where do we think we're likely to get money from? And then after that, there was kind of a breakdown of shorter, medium, longer term projects.
Okay.
So I was overall reasonably, I mean, I think there were other people who were in this, like Greg was there.
Yeah, I see.
Claire was there.
Hand raised.
I would probably call on those two first, because they were also there, but Sid was also there. So I mean, they probably give more perspective on it, but I was satisfied with the way they prioritized the project, so I thought it was very realistic. Now we just have to fight a million other people for money and then see what of these projects we can do. I'm hoping there'll be a little bit more kind of transparency into, like, I mean, there were 13 and 15 that they were kind of like, these are ones we think might be able to get some money for. And there's obviously, that's only 28 projects out of 105 that were submitted, including some that were submitted through us. And I'm hoping there'll be a little bit more transparency into kind of how the other projects, like what if any prioritization was thought about with all the other ones that it would have to just, I guess, be longer term because we don't have a pathway to money for them. But anyway,
Okay.
that's what I got.
Connie, did you have a question?
I just wanted to ask, who's supporting the grant writing work? Because that's arduous and time consuming and can be costly too. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's multiple departments within the county of San Mateo.
So the county departments
Yes.
will be writing the grants.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay.
Chris?
Somebody from the meeting can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, moving to the Zoom. Claire, did you have any questions or comments? Or
No, I think that was an excellent summary and a very balanced one. I was a little frustrated that they weren't able to zero in on exactly what we were going to do, but it made sense.
Scott, did you have any questions
No,
for Gus? Or
Just to say thanks, Gus, for giving us that information. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Great. Moving to the public. I see Greg Dieguez.
Could I yield my position to Timothy first because he has RCD experience with getting
yes.
grants, and so I'd like to have him comment.
Please go ahead, Timothy.
No worries. I mean, I also wasn't at the meeting, so I was going to defer to Greg, but I really appreciate the update, Gus. That is the main reason I attended the meeting tonight, and I just appreciate the summary. We've worked a little bit with the county on CRISP, and I do agree, like the available funding for fire is imbalanced versus the frequency of floods. I was only going to add some perspective that, it hasn't happened very frequently in San Mateo County, but in 2020, an 85,000 acre wildfire did start in San Mateo County and ended up destroying 1,500 structures. And so I think the risk post is still great, although the RCD, we work really closely with DEM and have been successful in getting funding for mitigation projects for that, and will continue to do so. We're also working on, and I'll talk more about this when I'm actually on the agenda, but we're working on a regional prioritization plan in collaboration with Santa Cruz County and portions of Santa Clara County that would catalog and prioritize projects specific to wildfires and position them for state funds. So that's kind of a parallel project that dovetails really, really well with CRISP. And I'll provide a bit bigger update on that later, but we've been coordinating with the county on that as well. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. Greg, do you want to go next?
Yeah, please. First, I want to acknowledge Supervisor Mueller and the Department of Emergency Management for trying. Ray kept his word. He followed through. It took 2 years. I don't know what all the holdup was. And Department of Emergency Management apparently raised their hand to try and manage this process, even though it's not clear that a lot of the crisp issues directly would fall into their purview. So I appreciate them trying and holding the meeting. But let's get real. Nothing got done and nothing was published. One of the things that the Department of Emergency Management lady mentioned was that Homeland Security concerns prevent the disclosure of the results. We don't have any transparency, and we don't know where our projects fell, how they were classified, or what questions they had. I know I submitted on behalf of the council about 15, and I haven't heard a thing. Let me know if anybody at the MCC has heard a thing, but they said they would get back to us with feedback on where we fell. So it's like Claire said, it's very frustrating not to see any results. I do understand what's going on in Washington prevents a lot of money. They did offer, and I thought this was Department of Emergency Management offering to support the grant writing, but they didn't offer any Measure K money or any input to Measure K. And they didn't offer any ongoing management process for these 100 and something projects. Presumably these are all valid things that, you know, one of these years we need to get done. And nobody was put in charge of going over this list and bringing them to the fore. And there's no accountability for that management process. I would comment that normally prioritization is done on things like the frequency of risk, the degree of cost damage, and the degree of cost to fix something. None of that was mentioned. Clearly getting money to start things is important, but where is the Measure K money going? Okay, you know, we heard for 2 years now that the coast side has gotten a disproportionate share of Measure K money, but I haven't seen a single detail. And there was $122 million in the spreadsheet they went over at the retreat, and 62 million of it went to 2,200 homeless people. So, I mean, there's got to be more perspective on the risks and damages to the people who live here, the 12,500 people here, and maybe the 12,500 in Half Moon Bay. What I would ask is that the MCC try and get out of the county what's going on to the projects we submitted and to track them and not forget them. And this is something that I said when I was on the council, we need to do a better job of follow-up. So to me, this thing was a big thud in the dark. Not that people didn't give it their best effort, but they spent all the time talking about generic things about where the risk is in the state and the so forth, but nothing specific about any project we submitted. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Sid?
Thank you. I was at the meeting as well, and the very first thing they opened with was the big disappointment, and that was they're closing off this project. They're done with it. And they were basically wrapping up saying they did what they could do. So to me, that was a disappointment because I figured, well, if they're going to keep going, you know, we understand that there's a government issue right now in the federal government with funding, but you know, that shouldn't mean they won't keep trying. But it might just be that they were told by the county government that we don't have any money for any of these projects. So just tell them, you know, we've heard their complaint and thanks very much. I'm not sure. But Shruti from Department of Emergency Management, which now they've changed their name. I can't remember what they changing their name to, but it was called DEM. And she was only recently hired because the last guy retired. And she did her best to put a good spin on it. I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday, and that's when they had their Measure K wrap up. The Citizens Oversight Committee gave their talk about, you know, where the money was allocated and where we had decided to spend the money. I don't know how many of you went to the thing at Ray's office where we had to put our little marbles in the jar, and we all talked about I mean, in our group anyway, emergency evacuation and emergency response was the most important thing during that part of Measure K. But they turned around and gave a lot of the money to homelessness and low-income housing and that sort of thing. So, and I asked during that meeting, you know, how come the coast side doesn't have an emergency evacuation center? And here we've had that issue with the crazy tsunami alert and no place to evacuate to, even though it was kind of a phony alert. We found out that they're not really ready for us to have an emergency over here. So basically, they haven't had, that was just the wrap up for the 2024 Measure K. But I don't believe they've completely made up their minds yet on what they're planning to do for a regular Measure K for next year going forward. They may have had a meeting, but they didn't mention it on Tuesday. However, they still don't have any plans to give the Midcoast an emergency evacuation center. And when I asked about it specifically, they said, well, why don't, you know, I basically wanted to know why they don't fund the Midcoast. And they said, well, when we fund things, it goes for things that benefit the entire county. So like, I guess they meant if we need to emergency evacuate, we have to go to the San Mateo County Event Center or something. I don't know. It was a very mamby-pamby kind of a response to my question, but usually they don't even answer questions when you ask one at the Board of Supervisors. However, I think we should put in really strong input to the county that we need an emergency evacuation center because we're never going to get one. They don't fund us for anything over here, whereas cities get a lot of money and they can fund their own projects, but they also, you know, our property taxes get taken out at the same rate as everybody in the county, but the county keeps that money and they give
Okay.
back some of the money to cities. So when you
Can
get
you
your
wrap it up,
tax
Sid?
bill, look at it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Sure.
Michelle?
Hi, yeah, I went to the meeting too, and so they're actually going to be called the San Mateo County Emergency Management. So they're dropping the D from DEM, so that's their new name. Got a new logo as well.
Thanks.
So their number one priority for Chris was the sewer authority. Their approach to the next steps is no, they don't have another part of the county that's going to take it over right now, but I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit like that stormwater ordinance, how sustainability is at the top and they're working with all the other departments below. I don't think sustainability would necessarily be the department that would be the lead, but perhaps Public Works might. I don't know, but they haven't made a decision. In terms of the grant writing, I talked to the guy, Laramie, who was one of the presenters, and I cornered him for about 15 minutes. And basically, Ray has budgeted, I think, $200,000 or $300,000 for grant writing. And they don't want to burn that money up right now. They want to wait for the federal government to sort of simmer down a little bit so they know where to point and shoot. They are on the federal website looking for grant opportunities every single day. So they are grant hunting. But to Greg's point, there's a lot of goodwill, but there's nothing going to get done until we have money. And Gus said the same thing. So that's the problem. There's a plan, but there's no money.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Jane?
Hi, I didn't go to the meeting. Thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I just have some higher level comments, I don't mean higher level, but wider viewpoint comments on grant writing and what we might ask for. I think because of all the wildfires, we've now come to a rather bipolar way we're looking at our problems. We have wildfire, and we think, oh, take all the trees down and everything will be solved there. Then we've got the flooding. It's like, no, don't take the vegetation down. And I think if we took a more middle of the road approach, where instead of stripping out vegetation, we started thinking about how do we replace trees? How do we maintain them? How do we have both more native wildlife and plants and also sustain the beautiful ones we have, because research is now showing that some of the native plants are not surviving climate change. And also I listened to a geologist and he talks about how the jet streams are keeping storms over an area, which often contributes to this flooding. So I really hope the community can move to a place where we can have more sophisticated conversations about the solutions. I know when I talked to the fire department many years ago, they said the reason fires are rare here is because of the marine layer, and the marine layer is dependent on the trees. So my hope in writing grants is we just don't say, okay, we're going to take out all the trees or we're going to do this or that, but we have this balanced, aware approach to nature. And I was very surprised. This will be my last comment. I went to a sustainable farm. They don't use any poisons. And the reason they don't, which really surprised me, but it shouldn't have, is because they said when nature is balanced, you don't have insects eating your crops. And so that's what I'm hoping for, is that whatever grant we write shoots for how do we get healthy balance in our neighborhoods so we don't have extreme consequences as far as emergencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. All right. I don't see any other comments. So I'm going to bring this back then. Is there anything else on this topic before we move on? Okay. I mean, are there any actions we should consider, or should we
I think
hunt that to another meeting?
I think Greg made a good point about, well, I don't know, like literally right the second thing, but we should just continue to surface with Ray that we would love to know kind of if any of our projects are in those 28, if not, was there any particular reason or anything we could do to, make our projects more palatable to the grant writing universe? I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
Can I just ask a quick question? So wouldn't that be influenced by us he's asked us what our priorities are here on the coast. I mean, isn't that something that we can then help influence that way? Because he asked us to specifically be very clear about what our top priorities were for him to fight for that money. So I think that's our opportunity to leverage that as well. Let's see if we can get some, we can't fight for some grant writing for us. Great.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could prioritize whatever 15 projects we submitted. We could try to prioritize them ourselves, although again, in the end, the prioritization is probably more driven by what you'd like to get money for than what we would most want. You know what I mean? Like if the number 5 thing in our list is the thing most likely to get money, then that's actually the number 1 thing.
That's right. I agree with you 100%, right? We should look at it with that lens on it and then determine.
Okay.
Great.
I'm aware that we are way over time. We still have council activity and future agendas. Is there any council activity that is burning for somebody to report?
I will just mention one thing. The Age Friendly, the clinic, the Dignity Clinic that is open downtown, they are intending to continue to keep that clinic open. And they're intending to keep that clinic open beyond the project end date of May. So that was really great news. And they're gonna hopefully start working with Seton soon to figure out what's going on there. But at least we've got a clinic for a couple days a week, and hopefully we'll sustain that going forward. So that was good news.
Well, that's good. Claire, did you have anything?
I don't think so. I do want to make sure that we get the next agenda, next meeting's agenda announced, because that's important. I'll just go ahead and do that. The CAL FIRE will attend the next meeting and do a detailed presentation about the meaning of the new fire maps and how it'll affect us and what we can do about it. I think that'll be really good.
Yes,
So if we're, okay, so we've moved on to next agenda.
seems so.
I would love to have stormwater on the next agenda, because I think I would like to make the case that we should go ahead and, so I think we've made a good, I can't really talk about it, Brad. I want to introduce a discussion about moving forward with our peer review and getting this thing to Ray so he can do whatever he's gonna do with it.
Would you be comfortable with maybe moving it to the second, the meeting after the next meeting?
Sure. If that's,
Um,
if we can't get it on the next one, fine.
I'm just thinking fire is gonna be another
Big
long topic.
Yeah.
Fair.
I underestimated the topic tonight,
Yeah.
the time needed, so that would be my proposal, but it's up to the council if anyone feels strongly.
I think at this point,
One more week. won't be.
fine, sure, fine.
I think it's important to get it right.
Mhm. Yes, I think it's also important to get it
Done.
done. Like Ray stood here and said that to us, right? And that was 2 months ago. So let's get
Okay.
it done. Okay,
Okay.
so 2 meetings from now.
Okay, and the other thing I noticed in terms of future agendas is that there were several comments that were sent to the council about pesticide use on the bluffs for oxalis control. Is that something we want to approach at all? I mean, is that a follow-up to our earlier Quarry Park pesticide conversation, or is it? I guess what should be our response to that? Does anybody?
Can we get a quick comment from the county? Like, just have them say, here's what we're doing. This is how much we're using on the bluff. Can we
So
get
maybe
them-
like an update of some sort?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay,
Well, I think it also ties into comments that we heard from Melinda McNaughton that were when Nicholas and his team presented on their vegetation management work, where she was requesting that follow through on some disclosure about the quantity. And so I think that the follow-up is that's a topic to follow up on.
okay.
So I know that that's not exactly what the Pillar Point issue was. That was just sort of, I think, a triggering event for some people that saw that there was action and pesticide use, continuing up there.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue though, and I'll say that I was one person who was surprised, is that I entered on one end of the trail and did not see a sign until I exited on the other end of the trail. I did not recognize the pesticide that was used, and I was wearing my barefoot shoes. So then I had to decontaminate them because I walked right past the oxalis. So, it's troubling because then you track that stuff wherever you go if you're exposed to it, and it can go into your home if you don't think about that. So it's a concern, especially if it's not posted correctly. The sign at the end of the trail was this size. It was a piece of paper laminated. And you had to get up close to read it because it was not large print. So, that to me is an issue on a public trail that entertains all kinds of users, including children. So follow up in that regard. And you're right, it directly ties into the larger topic. Are there any other topics?
Well, what we heard tonight, we heard from almost 25 people between letters, chat comments from people that did not speak, people that spoke on Zoom, and people that came down here and spoke in person. And there's a wide array of specific topics that they spoke to, but I think the more embracing one is feeling like there's the public is weighing in on whether or not this should happen, not really wanting to wait around for the RFP to be funded, and then the project goes through preliminary design, and then there's public meetings about what is proposed. They want to weigh in now on, bigger picture strategic planning related issues about whether or not there should be a parking lot there at all. And I also wrote down how many people spoke in favor of the proposal, and it's a big 0.
Yeah.
And that recommendation of us pushing the county to bring in the groups together, like a more collaborative approach, that Granada, Harbor, Caltrans. I think that was mentioned the last meeting, and we heard it again tonight. So I think that kind of follow up to see if there's something that can be done.
Yeah.
To your point, to get a more holistic.
Because I think the people that live here feel like there's a lot of forces at work that are going to be changing some features of the community that are pretty dear to them, and in ways that they don't really want to have happen at all.
And incremental, this group's doing this group's doing that, this group's doing that. Like, how do we get the whole picture?
Yeah.
Somebody to look at the whole picture.
So I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm just struggling with, as far as what the MCC can do, what would be our next steps? And is this something we should just put on the agenda for discussion at the next meeting to figure out what the next steps are?
Yeah, maybe.
So should we draft a letter saying we oppose the parking lot?
No.
that the
Well, I
harbor-
think what's being suggested is that we look at it at a higher level and sort of think about what next steps might be needed before we draft the letter. Am I wrong?
No, I agree. The idea of,
So Scott, you're ready to jump in and draft the letter.
Well, I mean, that's, yes, that's what I'm saying. But if you say no, that's okay. I mean, we know what everybody wants. We got to put it on the record at some point saying the community is opposed to this. It can be pretty simple, I would imagine. But I'm open. I'm certainly in support of agendaizing it and discussing it with the community and saying, what we would like to say in the letter, as that's our power. That's what we do, right? We were going to suggest something. And this is an opportunity to do that, I think. So, but but if you want to agendaize, that's great. And then we can move forward at that point.
So I think that's a little different than what Connie and Chris brought up, in that it sounded to me in several comments tonight that people wanted us to take the lead in a different way, not just writing a letter, but to encourage to create some kind of way to convene these people to talk to each other. And
Claire's waving her hand. I see her.
Claire?
What about a compromise solution here? Because I think we were a little bit limited in actually convening all these people. We don't really have the infrastructure to do that. But what if we did write a letter and send it to all these people, encouraging them to start working together and offering our support for that?
That sounds very positive to me.
no.
Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out what I need to record here for the next step. So we'll have it briefly discussed at the next meeting, and we'll have a letter drafted, or we'll talk about drafting the letter.
What if we don't decide to do it at the next meeting? What if we just have, because we've got some meaty topics that are a little bit in flux for the next couple of meetings. What if we can't do everything all at once? What if we put this on a priority list to do as soon as possible?
Okay.
That sounds good. Yes.
Claire and I will figure out how it makes it onto the agenda.
Can I just throw something out there for people to think about?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, I would throw out Jim's not using the west side for parking, because the problem he's trying to, like, I always try to think about, like, what's the problem somebody else is trying to solve? Problem he's trying to solve is revenue for the harbor, right?
Right.
So he looks at, like, there needs to be more parking. He's like, okay, but I can't use the west side because the west side is where you would put the revenue stuff. So he's looking at the east side because it's a money, as is always, it's a money issue, right? So I would just throw out there, like, he needs ideas for how to raise money.
That's a
Can
good
we
point.
also, instead of just sort of saying your idea sucks, like, can we also think about, like, there's a lot of smart people who live in this place. Let's all start brainstorming what can the harbor do to raise money? Because that's the problem he's trying to solve. And if he could solve it a different way, then he'd be probably more open to using the west side for parking, because it does make more sense to put the parking over there, but not if, in his mind, not if you're trying to solve a revenue
Well,
problem.
And Jim also pointed out that this is a Harbor Commission decision. It's
Right.
not just, it's not him.
No,
And
I'm using him as the
Yeah.
stand, the whole harbor and it represents. Yes, he's a guy just trying to solve problems that have landed in his lap. But
well, and I think it has to also be congruent with the fact that the community wanted it to be a working harbor, not
Mhm.
a retail center or a, that kind of conflict.
well,
They
I
wanted
think
a
we're all gonna have
working
to make
harbor.
some hard prioritization to say, like, what's more important. Preserving the wild character of the Burnham Strip, or like letting there be a little more retail in the harbor. Like, I'd rather just put more retail in the harbor and keep the Burnham Strip the way it is personally. But
Yeah.
that's obviously a community discussion, but that's, I guess, I'm just sort of throwing out there. Let's also try to solve the problem he's trying to solve, because that makes it more likely that we can have the outcome that we want to have with.
How does that solve the parking problem for him? Creating
Because
more
he
revenue?
could use because he doesn't need to use the west side. He could put the parking on the west side and doesn't need the west side for revenue stuff, if we can come up with a different way for him to raise revenue.
But I think that though it is kind of a chicken or egg thing, right? Because more revenue brings in more people, more visitors
Yeah.
who
Yes.
drive more cars.
Right,
So,
which would, yeah, and then you use the west side for that.
well, there are also parcels within the Princeton itself that they have purchased and presumably may purchase more. And I'm wondering, can't that those already developed areas be used in some way that alleviates some of this?
Yeah, well, at some point, they're gonna say, well, it's just too far away, but members of the public are already saying that about this
Yeah.
proposal that we heard about tonight, which is, it's, like I said, it's 2,500 feet from Surfers Beach. Half a mile is quite a ways to go with, your family and
It's not gonna happen.
all that kind of, that's.
And all these purchases cost money, right? So that just pours on more need to find more money. So, I'm
But to your
perplexed
point,
by
though,
it.
you use the other lots for revenue generation, some of those additional lots, you wouldn't put parking all the way out, down that far, because that doesn't help a fisherman trying to get to
Well,
but there
it's,
could be
it's,
revenue generation there that then he could use the.
the fishermen park there, what, twice a year? I mean, it overflows literally twice a year
Yeah.
for about a week. And I use the lot because I bring my boat and launch from there, and that's where you have to park. And during those times, I know that either I have to get there super early or I'm gonna have to walk and drop the boat off and go park somewhere else. And usually it means I'm parking in the lot across, which is never full except during major events. So,
You mean by the hotel?
yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, I have no idea what the solution is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we are more likely to get the solution that we want
Yeah, of
on
course.
the east side of this thing if we help him solve the problem that I think he is trying to solve. That's all I'm saying. And
Well,
there's a lot of
everybody
smart
come
minds
to-
here that can think about that.
Everybody come to the next meeting with one good idea.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
It's-
At least one idea.
it's
Can we?
10 PM and I think, are there any other future agenda items or shall we adjourn?
I vote for adjourn.
I vote for adjourn.
Okay, Dan,
Yeah.
Okay, Dan.
quickly.
Yeah.
And as far as alternative, ideas, there's big piece of land between on the north side of the hotel parking lot, the new surfers, those RV lot. In between that edge and where they start active farming. That could be used like you're saying, it's 2 days out of the year, 3 days out of the year.
Yeah.
Just so it's open space, and then for the 2-3 days, that is the designated area. It's to walk right through the parking lot, or they could squeeze a few. It shouldn't be all concentrated in one area. It could be spread out, and if that doesn't work, set up like a reservation thing. Hey, if you want to park your truck, set up a reservation. Have them contain their own business. That seems to be, and then. As far as future revenue, that could be discussed later.
Kimberly? Kimberly?
Who is saying that?
It's me. I had my hand raised. I just want, it's Sid.
Be
I just
fast.
want really quick, Farm Day is March 28th. Maybe the MCC wants to go because there's lots of public officials there. It's at the IDS. I don't know if you guys know what it is, but there's usually.
Yes, I know what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Bye. Night.
What day is Farm Day?
March 28th.
March 28th.
Mhm.
Anybody want to go to Farm Day and represent the MCC? We're all glazed over.
I work up in the city.
I've been to that before. You don't actually go represent the MCC, you just go. If you want to buy a ticket, go and you talk to people. There's no like, oh, here we are, the MCC. Doesn't happen that way.
I see. So it's more an opportunity just to put a bug in somebody's ear.
Network and stuff, yeah.
Well, maybe people can think about whether they might be interested in doing that. At this point, I'd like to adjourn if no objection. All right. Thank you.
Right.
Recording